Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of the ICAC's 80th Plenary Meeting. And before I get proceedings underway, let me just give you a few housekeeping points, or remind you of a few housekeeping points. First of all, synchronized interpretation is available in Russian, Arabic, French, and Spanish, and I'm assured that the technical difficulties we had yesterday have now been resolved, and you can access that interpretation at the bottom of your Zoom page in the interpretation link, which it looks like a globe, and you just go in there and choose the language that you want to be interpreted into. Also, please ensure that your mic is set to mute. And if you need to ask a question, or you want to ask a question, please do so by raising your hand. Please be aware that we don't continually monitor the chat. So if you're putting questions in the chat, we can't guarantee that those questions will be asked. So the easiest way is to raise your hand, which you can find in the reactions button at the bottom of the Zoom page. Just click on there and you'll see raise hand. So that just leaves me now to start the proceedings, and we've got a very exciting day today with 2 very exciting sessions, and I'm delighted to introduce the first chair, Dr. Keshav Kranthi. I see in the program that Keshav is down as head of technical information, but his job has actually evolved, and it's evolved more than just providing technical information to one of applying that information, applying the science on the ground. So Dr. Kranthi is the ICAC chief scientist now. So apart from that, I know he needs no other introduction, as you all know him very well. So with that, I'll hand over to you, Keshav, to start the session formally. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kai, and thanks for the extremely kind introduction. So thank you so much. Good morning. Good morning to the chair and distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to welcome you to the technical seminar on how can regenerative agriculture contribute to a sustainable cotton industry. Friends, the world is talking about how regenerative agriculture can be one of the most promising strategies to regenerate soil carbon, soil health, and to combat the ill effects of climate change. And today we are privileged and honored to have 3 global leaders or distinguished speakers on the subject: Professor Ratan Lal, Professor Fabio Echa, and Dr. Kate Haig. The presentations will be for about half an hour each, and each presentation will be followed by questions and answers. I would now like to introduce you to our first speaker, Professor Ratan Lal. Professor Ratan Lal is a distinguished university professor of soil science and director of the CFAES, which is called the Ratan Lal Center for Carbon Management and Sequestration at the Ohio State University. He's also the adjunct professor at the University of Iceland and the Indian Agriculture Research Institute, India. Professor Lal has authored or co-authored more than 1,000 refereed journal articles and more than 550 book chapters. He has written and edited more than 100 books. Most of us, like me, have grown on his publications. Professor Lal was included in the Thomson Reuters list of the world's most influential scientific minds from 2014 to 2016, and he is amongst Clarivate's highly cited researchers in agriculture, as well as ranked #1 in agronomy and agriculture overall. Professor Lal was ranked 34th globally for the year 2020 and ranked 73 globally for career from 1973 to 2020 among the top 2% of scientists by Stanford's Ioannidis in 2019, 2020, and 2021. Professor Lal has received an honoris causa degree from 9 universities throughout Europe, United States, and Asia. He's also the recipient of the Medal of Honor from UIMP. It is at Santander, Spain in 2018, and the Distinguished Service Medal of IUSS in 2018. He is the fellow of 5 professional societies. Professor Lal is laureate of the GCH ERA World Agriculture Prize 2018. There's a long list, but I'm still delighted to read a few of them. The Glinka World Soil Prize in 2018, Japan Prize in 2019, US Avasti IFCO Prize in 2019, the ARIL Global Food Innovation Award in 2020, and the highly coveted World Food Prize in 2020, and India's Civilian Honor Padma Shri Award in 2021. Friends, I'm delighted once again. I'm proud to introduce you to Professor Lal. Professor Lal, I now request you to please take the floor. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Keshav Kranti, thank you so much for your very kind words. I do not know what to say, but it's very pleasure and an honor to be here. I also want to thank Dr. Kai Hughes, the Executive Director, many other colleagues who have helped invite me today, and I greatly appreciate it. I also talked to the group a couple of years ago. I'm going to share the screen. Hopefully it works. Can you see the full screen slide?
Yes, Professor.
Thank you. I'm going to talk something about soil health, and I must also confess that research-wise, I do not have direct experience in cotton, but I grew up in a small farm in Punjab, Haryana area in the 50s and 60s, and we grew small home consumption need cotton, which was my favorite patch of land because cotton was grown in combination with some melons and cucurbits and cantaloupes, also mixed few plants of okra in it. So I have very fond memory of those fruits from the cotton, and the cotton grown was 2 types. One we call American, and the other one we call Desi. And the Desi cotton was not white. It was a little bit khaki color and some other colors as well. And it was very easy to pick compared to the American cotton. And the American cotton farmers grew in those times because English was not quite understood by them. They always called it Alice until I went to college and found out what Alice meant. It actually was LSS. And LSS stood for Lab Singh Selection. Lab Singh was a cotton breeder at Lalpur in Pakistan at that time, which eventually came to the Indian side as Punjab Agriculture University. So I have many fond memories of cotton cultivation since those days in 50s and 60s. At that time, I did not quite understand what the Green Revolution was, although it was happening. As a result of Green Revolution, I think most of the time we always talk about food crops. While the population increased 2.5 times over a 60-year period from 3.1 billion to almost 8 billion now, the global cereal production increased 3.3 times from less than 1 billion to 3 billion tons of grains. And therefore, the per capita cereal production increased 32% over that time. And this many people like to call the Borlaug effect, Norman Borlaug, the wheat breeder. The increase also happened in cotton. I tried to look up the data from 1960 onward, but here is a slide of the production and consumption as well as the A index, that's the cents per pound of cotton. And it is very impressive in terms of the total stock of cotton.
Professor Lal.
Yes.
I'm really sorry, but we still have those technical difficulties with the translation. If you could just bear with us and just hold for a second while we
Should I repeat
technicians.
whatever I have said? Let me know.
Yes, please. Sorry. I'm really sorry about that.
That's okay. Let me know when you're ready.
Thank you. And my apologies once again. We thought the technicians had sorted that yesterday, but they've asked for a couple of minutes just to sort it out again. I think when we get started, Professor Lal, if you could just go back a little bit to a convenient point where you'd like to start the story, bearing in mind that those that weren't listening in English will have missed what you've said.
You mean even the story of my childhood growing cotton?
I think you could go from after that, but
Okay,
it's up to you. Wherever you think is
this slide right now, which is on the front screen.
Yeah.
Okay. So are we ready?
I'm just waiting for the go ahead. Just bear with me a second. At this stage that I would normally tell a joke, but unfortunately, as it can't be translated, it's not worthwhile. So.
Well, those of us who understand English should have some benefits.
Yes. Hopefully nearly there.
Well, since this is my second time that I'm speaking, the most common joke I tell people when I'm a second-time speaker, that there was a speaker who was invited second time, and after he turned on the light, after the presentation, had realized that there was only one person in the hall who was sitting close to the exit door. And he said, I'm glad that at least there is one audience. And he said, no, sir, forget about me. I'm just the caretaker for the room. So I have been waiting. When you're finished, I'll switch off the lights. And he said, well, that's all right. But what's your opinion of my presentation? He said, to be honest with you, this was the second worst presentation that he has ever heard. So, oh my gosh, I'm glad it was the second worst. And then he said, what was your first worst ever presentation? He says, that was when you came first time. So I hope that's not the case. Maybe better.
I can assure you there's more than one person here, and I've had the word that we're all ready to go.
All right. So we got the, I must thank the translator interpreters. They are very important. They do a great job. and not very easy because sometimes people like me talk very fast. So I really appreciate what you do. Anyway, I was talking about the Green Revolution, 1961 to 2020, when the global population increased over that period 2.5 times, but the cereal production, contrary to what Malthus had predicted around 1800, circa 3.3 times. So here was a trend which was different than normally expected. And the per capita cereal production, of course, went up. And normally people call this the Borlaug effect. Wheat breeder from Summit, native of Iowa, after whom the World Food Prize is dedicated. Cotton production also went up, and we have a very good information about the production and consumption. As you notice, globally, very much stable, but the price index, that cents per pound, gone up since 2020s. Could be several reasons. And this is where I had to stop, where I wanted to show the blue graph from 2000 to 2030 is Chinese stocks estimated. The gray stock is rest of the world stocks. And you notice constant curve from 2020 onward. And then the production and the consumption, which very much keeping up with the needs of the time. If you look at some countries, their cotton production in 2021, 2022, China and India, some decrease, but other countries, including US, quite a lot, significant, somewhere between 2.5 to 3 million bales increase over that time period. This is a relatively important slide, in my opinion, because cotton production and consumption here giving countries, non-producing countries and producing countries GDP and Human Development Index. Certainly cotton is a key driver of economic growth in many countries, those dealing with production, some of the examples I showed you. And cotton has a large potential role in advancing sustainable development goals of the United Nations, the Agenda 2030. That means next 8 years or so, production of cotton can have impact on sustainable development goal, especially if we can manage soil health properly. Here I want to go back to my college days when we were learning cotton, especially the example I was giving LSS cotton. One common thing was because cotton was being grown in that part of the world during the monsoon season, so flooding of cotton because of the poor soil structure and heavy rainfall was a common thing. And I do not remember the exact statistics, but I was told if cotton is flooded for several days because of poor soil structure and aerobic conditions, then the flower will not open, the bud will drop off, and those flowers which are open, they will not make a cotton ball, and those balls can also fall off because of the poor aeration and aerobic condition. So sustainable development goals on dependent upon soil health, certainly hunger, climate action, life on land, and in poverty, cotton could play a very important role in it. Good health, of course, clean water, many other factors. And all these good things, the green revolution, the production of cotton, the sustainable development goals, did depend on inputs. Nitrogen fertilizer globally increased almost 9.2 times, phosphorus 5 times, potassium 5 times, pesticide use, irrigation, water consumption 3,150 kilometer cubed, 70% of which is for irrigation globally. Degraded lands area, 1/3 of the entire land is degraded, and because of erosion, because of compaction, salinization especially of irrigated lands. And here is an example of what I was talking about, the cotton and flooding, where the anaerobic conditions, looking at the picture A and B. A is the general picture of the stem of cotton, which has been flooded for a while. And the B is a magnified picture compared with the normal stem of cotton plant. So anaerobic conditions can impact quite a lot, not only cotton, but other crops as well. One thing that might surprise you here is rice also being affected by poor soil structure and anaerobic condition, contrary to what we normally think about rice. But here we are talking about aerobic rice. We are now hoping that rather than growing flooded paddy rice, we will be focusing on aerobic rice, which has a lot of savings, not only of water, but also emission of methane and nitrous oxide gases. And I'll come back to that point in a moment. That brings us to the topic of sustainability, which refers to a state in which demands placed on the environment, that means soil, water, atmosphere, climate, can be met without reducing its capacity to allow all people to live well now and in the future. And the four pillars of sustainability are environmental, economic, social, and institutional. And therefore, sustainability is indeed integration or balancing of environmental, social, institutional, and economic issues. And in this regard, cotton obviously plays quite a role on all four pillars. And therefore, the sustainable development is making people better off in ethically sound way, stewardship of natural resources. In that context, the 20th century Green Revolution, which was a miracle indeed, and we should not try to take anything away from the credits that people deserve for that, saving hundreds of millions from starvation. But there was a concern with environmental issue and land degradation. Therefore, now we should be thinking more about soil-based approach to production, including that of cotton, ecosystem-based, so that we do not have to keep dumping chemicals and water. Of course, some are needed, and knowledge-based, science and management-driven. We should also think about rights of soil. I know that sounds kind of a very awkward. Soil is a living entity. 25% of all biodiversity of the land, of the earth, lives in the top 30, 50 centimeter soil. Therefore, just as universal rights of human, rights of animals, rights of butterfly, rights of panda, there must also be rights of soil and rights of nature and rights of hills. Being the essence of all life, soil must have rights to be protected, restored, thrive, and managed judiciously through eco-intensification. Eco-intensification does not mean get rid of chemicals, does not mean get rid of machinery. It means using it effectively, efficiently, so that the leakage into the environment is less. That's what it means. It also means producing more from less. Less land, less water, less fertilizer and pesticide, less energy, and less emission of greenhouse gases. Hopefully, if we improve the productivity, we can return some land back to nature by improving soil health. And that soil health, a healthy soil, such as we see in Midwestern United States and some other parts of the world, full of life, a lot of pores, a lot of roots, a lot of organisms, both that you can see and you cannot see. And soil and life are intricately interconnected. Charles Kellogg said there can be no life without soil and no soil without life. They have evolved together. I would like to take it one step further and indicate that rhizosphere, that the soil root hair interface at nanoscale, is the only known site in the universe which has the capacity, ability to resurrect death into life. That's living soil. That's why soil is so important. And that capacity to resurrect death into life depends on soil health. And soil health refers to its capacity as a dynamic and biologically active entity within natural managed landscape to sustain multiple ecosystem services. Important among those to humanity and nature are net primary productivity, food and nutrition security, biodiversity, water purification, renewability, carbon sequestration, air quality, atmospheric chemistry, elemental cycling, are both human well-being and nature conservancy. Nature is very critical. Humans are part of nature. Therefore, we should never forget nature, give more emphasis to nature through sustainable soil management. And it has a law of return. Law of return was written by Sir Albert Howard in 1920s when he was president of the then Indian Science Academy. He was based in Indore, India, where cotton is grown. And it was he who said everything taken from nature must be returned to the same site in one way or the other. In simple words, replace what is removed, respond wisely to what is changed, and predict what will happen from anthropogenic and natural perturbation. That brings me to the question of how do you fertilize crops? And I would like to recommend CNPK rather than NPK. If soil has more C put in as a biomass on the surface of crops, on land, or on the cover crops grown to produce nitrogen as well as biomass, that will minimize the dependence on chemical because the use efficiency will be higher. In natural condition, use efficiency of nitrogen, even under ideal conditions, is about 50%, mostly 30% or 20%. And this is where if the sea and soil health is better, the need for NPK over time will decrease. The other part I'd like to state that the soil is no different than a bank account. Just like from a bank account, we cannot withdraw more than what you put into it. Similarly, from soils, we cannot take more than what you add without degrading its capacity to support life. Therefore, gain of carbon into the soil or the other inputs through, in this example is carbon, biochar, compost, cover crop, roots, must always exceed the losses which happen because of erosion, leaching, and decomposition. This is the ideal condition where gains are more than the losses. In most cases, especially in developing countries, resource-poor farmers who have to take away everything, unfortunately, gains are always less than the losses. Therefore, soils continue to deplete. That brings the question of carbon farming. Can we grow carbon in the land? By restoring health of degraded and depleted soil, by enhancing input of organic matter content, by increasing eco-efficiency, by producing more from less, we can, as long as the carbon grown in the soil can also be used as a commodity for which farmers can receive compensation. The technical potential of carbon sequestration in soil of the world, and I think you could write a report perhaps on cotton growing soils, which I was trying to look for a report. I didn't find one, but that could be very important research topic. About 2.5 gigaton all soils of the world. Between 2020 and 2100, about 12-15 of us work together. The soil's potential to soak in carbon is about 180 gigaton. Giga is, by the way, 90 billion. Vegetation, another 155 gigaton, total about 330 plus gigaton, which means drawdown of atmospheric carbon dioxide about 150 to 160 parts per million CO2 between now and 2100. Therefore, if we can find known carbon fuel sources and use land properly, soil, water, etc., vegetation, the potential of limiting global warming to 2 degrees centigrade is still possible. Still, that requires transformative strategies from deplete, degrade, destroy, discard, dominate philosophy, approach, strategy, 5 Ds, taking everything from nature, to reduce, reuse, recycle, regenerate, restore, and return something back to nature. And I'll come back to that, returning back to nature toward the end. But one of the philosophy these days talk about is agroecology and regenerative agriculture. Regenerative agriculture is the one which is inspired by eco-innovation. It's powered by non-carbon energy, driven by a circular economy and green infrastructure, supported by the decarbonization of the terrestrial biosphere. We have lost from the biosphere more than 600 gigaton of carbon since the beginning of agriculture. Some of it should be put back, and that's what I was talking about, decarbonization. And that's the basis of the sustainable development. That would require some international soil policy. Global soil is a resource commons. There is an international soil policy vacuum to protect soil. Therefore, soil science must be connected with business leaders, policymakers, and general public. And there's a need for a multi-generational effort to enhance awareness about the importance of soil science and create an international soil policy. The Growing Climate Solution Act of 2020 in the US is a step in the right direction. They do acknowledge in that carbon can be sequestered in the land at less than $10 per credit. Credit is 1 metric ton of CO2 equivalent, which means if the farmers are compensated for more than that, that would be a good value to the farmers. The societal value of carbon, however, not considering the demand and supply part, but what the carbon put in the land does for the society through ecosystem services, is equal to $130 per ton of carbon. That's $35 per credit. That means if a farmer sequesters half a ton of carbon, the payment justified on the basis of 2013 price when this particular value was calculated, $26 per acre or $65 per hectare, or 1/3 ton of carbon, $43 per hectare or $18 per acre. The payment is particularly needed when the transition happens from conventional system of cotton, for example, cultivation, to improved system with positive carbon and structural budget. And that period can be 3 to 5 years, in which the payment for ecosystem services is critical so that the farmers do not suffer any loss in productivity, or they have additional input for the machinery or whatever else may be required. That means in the context of United States, we do have a Clean Air Act of 67, Clean Water Act of 72, hopefully the next Farm Bill being discussed at the moment. At present, these days, Healthy Soil Act. Now, many people believe, does that mean penalty and some kind of regulation to farmers? I hope not. I hope it means those who do good things, like grow carbon in their land, conserve water and soil, improve soil biodiversity and other things, should be compensated. And therefore, others who do not are not compensated, and hopefully they will also follow the same process. Considering that agriculture has a bright future ahead. More changes will be seen between 2020 and 2050 than have probably happened over the last 12,000 years since the agriculture began. Sustainable development goal, whether ending poverty, ending hunger, clean water, clean energy, all really depends on agriculture based on soil health. There are many other gains as well, like climate change adaptation, mitigation, good health and well-being, life and land and biodiversity. So we still have a good opportunity of 8 years more, 2022 to 2030, to adopt agricultural practices which will improve soil health and many other topics which are based on soil health. I have been talking in a way, how could we reduce the consumption of fertilizer? Right now, 200 million ton, perhaps by increasing the efficiency, better soil health, the fertilizer consumption would decrease over time. Irrigated area may increase from 350 million hectare now total to about 750 by 2100. And I'll say why I stopped at 750, because I don't think we need cultivated land more than that. That's my personal thinking. Cropland area should be plenty if we grow things properly. For example, sub-Saharan Africa, productivity should be tripled or quadrupled if we can translate known science into action, including conservation agriculture, which is only practiced on about 200 million hectares, should be practiced on all cultivated land. Grazing land right now, we have 4 billion hectares. We certainly need animal. We certainly need integrating crops with trees and livestock. But do we need 4 billion hectares? I doubt it. Proper management could reduce the area to 1/3 or less to what we have at the moment. Water use, I already mentioned, 3,150 kilometer cube with drip fertigation, and cotton should certainly be very applicable as far as the drip fertigation concerned. We could decrease it to 1/3, and the productivity, on the other hand, go up. Certainly in the dryland region and other developing part where there is a strong need for doing that. This will require looking at the political willpower in a way where you put natural resources, soil health in the center, and which depends the many other issues such as food security, water security, energy security, climate security, health and nutrition security, environment security, political security, and of course, global peace and harmony. I do want to emphasize global peace and harmony. Can you imagine not only the human suffering, but heavy machinery and use of other arm and equipment, what it does to land, to soil, to nature, to other wild animals? Sometime it will take generations for land to recover through the use of equipment related to war. There are recent reports how Agent Orange used in Vietnam is still causing problem even after 50 to 60 years. Therefore, there is a need for a paradigm shift. To answer the question, what would I suggest to make agriculture a solution to environmental issues? The logical response would be to objectively and critically consider how do we produce, transport, process, cook, consume, and dispose of the agricultural waste. A prudent strategy would imply making soil, water, and agriculture an integral part of the solution, and empowering farmers, land managers, to produce more and more from less and less by reducing waste, enhancing the eco-efficiency, restoring degraded soil, afforesting the denuded land, and saving soil and water for nature. It would be impossible to keep global temperature at safe levels unless there is a radical transformation in which we manage agricultural land and water. The last slide, I want to mention something about work ethic. I was very honored when Keshav was introducing me, and I have always believed whatever I have achieved on the basis that work as hard as no one can and dream as big as no one does, and never take success for granted. Success is never owned, it is rented, and the rent is due every day. In my case, it is due at 4 a.m. every morning. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you very, very much, Professor Lal. Wow, that was an amazing presentation. And I'm sure that all the distinguished delegates feel exactly the same that I feel. It was a feast, Professor. It was a feast of learning. Thank you so very much. Thank you. I'd now like to open the floor for questions, if any. I'm sure there'll be a lot many, but we'll still try to see how many we can take. I can see Mr. Rajiv Barwa's hand raised. Mr. Rajiv Barwa, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ratan Lal, for a very inspiring presentation. I just wanted two things. One is maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on the societal value and the the $10 per ton that you said. That's really a question. And the second question is that there's a lot of talk now, and we have people approaching us where they can measure carbon sequestration by satellite methods. And this could be a game changer for smallholder farmers. We have 6.5 million smallholder cotton farmers in India. So those are my two questions to you, sir.
Thank you. First, the societal value versus economic market-driven value. If you remember, Chicago Climate Exchange had a program on carbon sequestration. It started in, I think, 2000. It started at $1 per credit, $1 per metric ton of CO2. And it went up to about $6 in 2005 or 6, and then collapsed to 20 cents a ton. And the reason for that collapse was because of demand and supply issue. There was a lot of supply, but no demand. And the reason there was no demand, because there was no cap. You could burn as much fossil fuel as you want, contrary to what happened in Europe, there was a cap. So that is the market value price, 20 cents. So if you tell farmer, I give you 20 cents per metric ton of carbon, forget it. Nobody's going to take you seriously. Even now, some industry is paying $6, $8 per credit. Now, what is the societal value of which I calculated, and it is about 10-year-old now, I think 13-year-old. It is based on what does it take to grow carbon, crop residue, the land, the nutrients, conversion of residue into humus. And I took the price of all those entities at 2013 level and came up with $130 per ton of C. So there's a difference between the two. So I would recommend, until we have a very good policy on how to control emissions, and if we say demand-based economic price, farmer may not be rewarded adequately. So that's the difference which I wanted to make sure. Measurement, first of all, at least from the land-grant university point of view, in Ohio, for example, we have 8 experiment stations throughout the state. And each of those experiment stations, we have measurement of carbon since the 60s, 70s, and so forth. Each state has the data available. So use whatever we know. We don't have to monitor every acre of land. Once in a while, we have to check our estimate, but right now, handheld devices are being developed. So farmer can monitor changes in carbon without bringing sample to the lab, and also drone-based as well as satellite-based. So, but please understand, I don't think measurement limitation should be considered as a barrier to adoption of this technology. To just give you an example, Conservation Reserve Program in the US, which was a great success story as a part of the Farm Bill 1987. The idea was to decrease sediment load in Mississippi, and it was a success story. Did anybody ever monitor runoff erosion coming out from land? They simply took the satellite imagery to see if the land was set aside and retired. Pay farmer on that basis. We have to be very progressive and active, and rather than creating barrier to payment to farmer, be proactive and develop policy on the basis of knowledge we have.
Thank you very much, Professor. I see Dr. Talpur has a question. Dr. Talpur, please.
Thank you, Dr. Kranti. I don't have a question. I just have a comment. I highly appreciate for such a set of data, and I found it something new in the agriculture, and Dr. Ratan Lal has very well defined the new set for managing the carbons by managing the inputs and maintaining the soil health. I highly appreciate such type of the presentations would definitely add to the learners like me. And thank you very much, Dr. Kranti, for arranging such type of presentation. Thank you, Dr. Ratan Lal.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks for the kind comments. I'd now like to request Dr. Muhammad Akhtaruzaman from Bangladesh. Sir, the question,
thank you very much, Dr. Kranti. You just mentioned rightly, is very amazing and very insightful and very informative presentation. This one, I think his word, the right of soil. It's the hard first time I heard it. I mean, very amazing sentence it is. So it should be the slogan of the World Soil Day. The right of the soil. It's a very rightly he mentioned, and I just we are very unfortunate he is not working with the cotton, but I have a question. As a robust structure of cotton and very robust canopy and deep-rooted soil, is cotton has some advantage over the other field crops for carbon sequestration, he may mention, because we have to promote this kind of information to the policymakers for the cotton production and its role to sequestration of carbons. So,
well, thank you. I agree. You know, World Soil Day is coming up, and it's on 5th of December. And you may know World Soil Day is celebrated as a birthday of the late King of Thailand.
right.
And late King of Thailand name is Bhumi Pal Atulya Tej. Now, when this is Sanskrit word, when you pronounce this in English, it comes out completely different. Bhumi Pal. Bhumi, you know what it is? Soil. Pal, protector of soil. Atulya, unparalleled. Tej, power. Unparalleled power of soil protector. That's the name of the king. Whether king got that name as a title or this is what he was born with, but if parents gave him that name, I really salute them. If you look at this Bangkok's new airport, you know what the name of the new airport of Bangkok is? Swarna Bhumi. You know what that means? Bhumi, Swarna, golden soil. I think we need people like that, and I'm so glad that the World Soil Day is celebrated for the birth date of that. We should really promote it. Cotton, whether it has an advantage or other, any crop which is deep-rooted, any crop which does not decompose organic matter content very quickly is a very good starting point. But the important philosophy, which you may not like my saying that, it is not important what is grown, more important is how it is grown. Even corn, soybean, which may be considered as a poor crop because they promote erosion, if they are grown properly, they can protect soil. So how something is grown is more important than what is grown. But certainly crops can make a difference, especially with the deep-rooted part. Cotton may not produce enough biomass, which can, like some of the other crops do. So having a cover crop combination following cotton, if that is feasible, should be a very good option.
Thank you very much, Professor. I don't see any raised hands, so probably we could go to the next speaker. Professor, thank you so much. There couldn't have been a better way than starting this morning. And once again, my heart is filled with gratitude. Thank you very much, Professor. We move over to the next presentation by Professor Fabio Aisha. Professor Fabio Aisha will be speaking on improving cotton sustainability in the tropics. Professor Aisha is a well-known name in the world of cotton. He's a professor of cotton agronomy and physiology at São Paulo Western University in Brazil. He received his PhD in crop science physiology from São Paulo State University in collaboration with University of Arkansas, USA. He worked as cotton physiologist at Mato Grosso Cotton Institute, and he's currently professor and scientist at UNOEST, which is like UNOEST, and coordinator of the graduate program in agronomy. Professor Aisha is the founder and leader of the Cotton Study Group, GEA, in 2016, and member of the International Association of Cotton Researchers Association since 2016. Professor Aisha received the silver card from President Prudente's City Council for his work on education and research in 2019. He was awarded as Outstanding Advisor in the Brazilian Cotton Congress in 2019. Professor has authored and co-authored over 43 journal articles and has mentored 8 graduate students and 20 scientific initiation students. Professor, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Fabio Escher and I'm a professor and researcher in São Paulo Western University here in Presidente Prudente, Brazil. And first of all, I would like to thank you, Chair, for the introduction and the opportunity to speak today. I'm going to talk a little bit about improving cotton sustainability in the tropics, and we will discuss some results that we have been observing here in Brazil. This is the summary of the presentation. First of all, I will talk a little bit about Brazilian cotton overview. I'm going to present a state of case, focus on high yielding fields, and then we are going to discuss a little bit about agronomic practices to reduce environmental impacts, mainly in crop rotations and fertilizer management. We are going to address some challenges for the futures and final remarks. This graph shows the area of production in Brazil in millions of hectares. As we can see here in the 70s, we used to grow about 4 million hectares of cotton, mainly in the Paraná and São Paulo states, and then the area decreased. In the same times our production was very low, and mainly because the yields were low at that time as well. But in the early in the 90s, production changed to the center of Brazil, and then yields start to grow, and area decreased about 1 million hectares, and nowadays we have about 1.5 million hectares. And nowadays our production is about 3 million tons. This shows the high importance of our yields to achieve these productions and also to decrease the area of the cultivation. This figure shows the movement of cotton production in Brazil. At the beginning in the 50s, it started in the northwest part of Brazil, and then moved to São Paulo and Paraná states in the 70s. And then in the early 90s, it changed to Mato Grosso and also Bahia. So nowadays, Brazil has the first yield on rain-fed environments. Brazil is the second exporter, the fourth producer in the 50 and harvest area, and also the 70th consumer of cotton in the world. Here we are going to characterize a little bit about the annual rainfall in mainly in Mato Grosso and Bahia. As we can see, Mato Grosso has a better water regime than Bahia. It rains almost double in Mato Grosso than in Bahia. And Brazil for this, Brazil has 92% of the cotton production in rain-fed environments, and only 80% of our production is irrigated, mainly here in west of Bahia, due to the low rainfall that occurs here. Figure 3 shows the altitude of the areas. So most of the cotton areas are located between 300 and 1,000 meters above sea level. The highest altitudes are here in west of Bahia. And then we have a difference in temperatures. So Mato Grosso has temperatures a little bit higher than Bahia, but it's still in a good value for cotton crops express high yields. And so our annual mean temperatures is between 22 to 26 degrees Celsius. These are the main cropping systems. First in Mato Grosso, where cotton is grown after soybeans in 90% of the cases. But in some cases, we have cover crops, and then here after December, we have the cotton, as we can we call here cotton as a first crop, or here as second crop. In Bahia, we have 2 or 3 situations in rain-fed environments. So the grower need to choose soybeans, cotton, or maize. It's not allowed to grow 2 crops because there is low rainfall, as we can see here in Luiz Eduardo Magalhães, one of the most important cities in west of Bahia. So compared to Sorriso, that is Mato Grosso, the rainfall is much lower. So there is no rainfall enough to grow 2 crops in a season, as growers do in Mato Grosso. So when this grower has irrigation systems, sometimes he can grow soybeans and then cotton or maize as a second crop. Now I'm gonna characterize some commercial fields that yielded more than 3,000 kilograms per hectare of lint. Those fields were evaluated in Sapezal, Mato Grosso, in 2021 season, and Riachão das Neves in 2021/22 season. Both fields were rain-fed, so it was not irrigated. So in both fields, we had yields above 3,000 kilograms. Bahia yielded a little bit more than Sapezal. And in both sides, we had about 165 and 167 balls per square meter. So it's a high ball number. We had ball weight about 4.2 and 4.3 grams. And also gene turnout about 43 and 44%. So it's a very important component for achieving high lint yields. And we had plants not too high. It's about 107 centimeters in Sapezal and 97 centimeters in Riachão das Neves. But we had a good symposium node number. It's about 13 and 14 in Sapezal. So those fields, besides high yields, we had very good fiber quality as well, as we can see here in micronair, length, strength, and maturity. So when start looking for the soil analysis in those fields, we can see that Mato Grosso has a clay soil, and Bahia has a sandy loam soil. So in those fields, the main characteristics that we observed is high amount of phosphorus in the soil profile, low amount of aluminum that impairs root growth, and high amounts of calcium in the soil profile, and also boron. This is very important because we are discussing about rain-fed fields, so we need to improve the root growth in the soil profile. So first of all, trying to eliminate the aluminum toxicity is very important, and it is done by applying high amounts of lime and gypsum in some cases. In Bahia, it's a light soil, so the amount here in soil profile for boron is very low compared to Mato Grosso, but still this value is still very high for a soil profile about 6 centimeters. When we look for soil health or soil enzyme activity, what we saw was that acid phosphatase is a little bit lower than the standard parameters, but we are still looking for the error of this methodology. But for aryl sulfatase and beta glucosidase in the blue values, both for 10 centimeters or 10 to 20 centimeters soil layer, we saw values higher than the standard indicators for high yields. So one of the key characteristics is the high soil enzyme activity for both of these enzymes that are involved in soil organic matter mineralization, sulfur cycle in the soil, and also for phosphorus cycle in the soil. When we look for soil physics, as we can see here, Sapezal has a lower bulk density than Riachão das Neves. It is due to the soil texture. Here is clay soil, here is silt loam soil. And what gives to us a good idea of this soil structure is the soil air permeability. So here we often have problems with soil water logging. So it rains a lot, and the soil air permeability is very, very low. On the other hand, in Bahia, we had a very, very good soil permeability due to the sand content of the soil. And it is very important to water from rainfall infiltrating the soil. So this is a very important characteristic to allow plant grow later in the season, as we will see in the next slides. This is the weather data, temperature for both Sapezal and Riachão das Neves were about 20 degrees Celsius. Rainfall is about 900 millimeters in both seasons. And as we can see, the vapor pressure depth during the season was very, very low. So this is important to allow plant to keep the photosynthesis achieved during the season. So there is no important drought experience for the plant during this season. These results are from plant mapping from Sapezal. From Bahia is not ready yet, but as we can see here, there is no more yield accumulation up to node 20 or 21. So what happened here? As we can see, the ball weight in the top of the plant is very, very high. It's higher in some cases than the lower third of the plant. And also in this field from Sapezal, the fruit retention was very high. It's about, for the first position, about 83%. In average, we had fruit retention of 61%. And mainly first and second position balls accounts for about 95% of the yield. So it's very, very important to give the plants the opportunity to retain those balls. So what is the secret? First of all, I would like to give the importance of the climate. So mainly temperatures and rainfall that we saw in those fields. The length of the season, in both of the places we had cycle about 180 days, and also for the management. So the soil fertility construction in depths below 60 centimeters, mainly neutralizing aluminum, soil air permeability to allow air and water infiltration in the soil profile, and also soil biology. So those enzymes are linked to nutrients recycle. So it's important when cotton is in a system that involve residues from other crops like soybeans or maize consortiated with rosy grass. So given the importance of the soil biology, I'm gonna discuss a little bit about experiment, a long-term experiment that we are running here in Oeste. And those results were published this year in Agronomy Journal. And those treatments involved phelon, single grass, two grasses, a grass and a legume, and a mix of two grasses and one legume. So this is the carbon stock in a 5-year experiment. This is from the 50 year. So as we can see here, the carbon stock in the soil is higher when we had mix of cover crops. So what it means? It means that the CO2 has been inserted in the soil through the plant biomass, and also CO2 has been less liberated from the soil, as we can see here of CO2 quotient. So this is the annual increment rate of carbon. As we can see here in mix is much higher than the other cover crops, and also fallow has a negative increment. This is it is releasing carbon to the atmosphere. So by using a mix of cover crops, we are improving the carbon conversion rate in about 65%. That's a very huge number for tropical systems. When we look for dry matter production in those years, we saw cover crop residues, roots plus shoot was higher than 6 tons per year per hectare. We had that the balanced carbon nitrogen ratio residues should be equilibrated, because in sandy soils, as we have here, nitrogen is very important to avoid nitrogen mobilization by the soil microbes. So mixing legumes with grass is a very important strategy to input nitrogen and also to improve carbon addition on that soil. Also, we did something very interesting in this experiment. We put different nitrogen sources, urea and controlled release urea, and 3 nitrogen rates. And what we saw in this experiment was that when we have no cover crops in the off season, the responses of nitrogens increases, but we cannot achieve the highest yields that we saw in the cover crop mixture with the moderate nitrogen rate. So increasing carbon input and carbon diversity in the season results in an economy of nitrogen in those treatments. So this is because there is an improvement in soil nitrogen, and also it reduces the amount of nitrogen lost, mainly in organic form of nitrate. So improve the cover crop diversity is a very important in my opinion on the key of the strategies to improve soil quality and as well fertilizers economy, and to reduce the potential of nitrate lixiviation or leaching. So about the challenges that we need in the next years here in Brazil, one of them is to improve the crop diversity in the systems. We need more crops, more cash crops, cotton, soybeans, and maize or crop livestock integration systems are not enough. We need to diversify these systems. Nowadays, most of the cultivars are glyphosate or glufosinate tolerant, and it reduces the spectrum of herbicides to control the stalk regrowth. So in some cases, the grower needs to put some soil mechanization to destroy and to kill that plants that regrowth, because this regrowth here in middle of the soybean crops, it allows the boll weevil to feed during the off season. So it's very important that to kill this plant properly, to avoid the use of the soil machines to revolving the soil and lose the benefits of the no-till systems. So that's a very interesting thing, because there is a pest here controlling the revolvement or not of the soil. That's very serious because boll weevil is the most important pest for cotton in Brazil. My final remarks, as we saw in the study of days, improve yields is the best way to increase cotton sustainability, because it demands a lot of soil improvement, and it's not only chemical or physical quality. We have the soil health as well, and it is achieved by improving crop rotation systems. In the last 30 years, Brazilian cotton production has changed a lot, and now we are based in systems with soybeans, maize, and crop livestock integration systems. And the result of it was the increasing yield, production, and the reduction in the land use. Once again, I would like to thank you for the organization and the ICAC, Dr. Keshav, for inviting me for this meeting. And my email is here. If you have some doubts, I will be happy to respond to you. Thank you very much. Obrigado.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fabiosa.
Hi, Dr. Keshav.
Thank you very much for the excellent talk and for the very, very useful information, very useful data. It's inspiring indeed. One, I don't think there's any place on earth except Brazil where you can get more than 3,000 kilograms of lint fiber per hectare. There's nowhere. So congratulations. And that too, it is not about small experimental fields. It's thousands of acres. So it's an amazing feat, and you are indeed inspiring. And in this context, it must also be said that both Brazil and the United States are leaders in conservation tillage, on zero tillage, not just now, but for several years, in fact, for decades. So that serves as a great inspiration for the rest of the world. And you spoke on tropics, and tropics include some of the most difficult terrains of cotton cultivation, like Africa. So indeed, sir, thank you so much for the very, very inspiring presentation. And there was a lot to learn. I'm sure there'll be questions. There'll be, because conservation tillage and regenerative agriculture are so intimately linked. And you also spoke of the secrets. I can go on and on. I'm so excited about it. But I'd like to leave the floor open for any questions. Dr. Talpur, please, sir.
Again, thank you very much, Dr. Kranti, and thank you very much, Dr. Fabio, for an excellent presentation. My question is that the countries like Pakistan, who are highly dependent on the crops like wheat, because it is their staple food, what would you suggest, since you are talking about the crop rotations in terms of maize and soybean? What would be your suggestion in the context of wheat, and particularly with respect to Pakistan? Thank you.
Well, I don't know if I understand correctly, but your question about what I think about the wheat rotation or cotton, is that?
Yeah, you talked about the crop rotation for cotton cultivation, but since we are in a fix, we don't have crop rotation, more options for crop rotations. So in that case, what would you suggest?
I think we had a problem with the connection.
So you can't hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing now.
Dr. Kranti, can you help us to join us?
Yes, sir. Actually, your voice is clearer now. because even I couldn't hear a little bit for some time. If
Okay.
you can kindly repeat, sir.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Fabio, my question is that you are talking about the crop rotations for the better
Yes.
productions. But since the countries like Pakistan, we are in a fix because we don't have more crop rotation options. Since we have to grow the wheat on a large volume of land. So in that case, what would you suggest?
Well, we have some environments here in Brazil that we can't grow more than one crop a year. So the best strategy for us here in this case is to use cover crops. So like grasses or legumes or even mix of cover crops and leave that. So this is it's working for environment when we can't double crop. So as Dr. Law said before, in some cases the species really don't matter. You know, sometimes we need just to balance the CN ratio of the residues. It's a very good strategy to improve the carbon addition to the soil for the next crop, cotton in this case.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fabio.
Okay, thank you.
I see Dr. Venugopalan raise his hand. Dr. Venugopalan, please.
Yeah, thank you, Keshav. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Fabio, nice presentation, enjoyed it. It was very informative. There are a couple of reports recently which says that some of the farmers in Brazil want to go back to the long duration cotton because it is more productive and because of the problems in managing the stubble when you have a soybean or a cover crop followed by cotton. Do you think we are going back to the unsustainable ways?
I don't think so. I think that for some cases where the season is shorter, thinking about the rainfall pattern, it's a reality. So I think 2 or 3% only in Brazil are doing this main crop, cotton as main crop. Most of the cotton is in Mato Grosso, and for Mato Grosso, there is no season more profitable than soybeans and cotton. So probably they will keep doing that for longer. But in some cases, such as in São Paulo or in Bahia, cotton is the main crop and it's the only crop in the year when we don't have irrigation. So I don't believe that cotton will be the first crop in Mato Grosso due to the possibility to do the double crop system.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Esha. I see Dr. Kamrul Islam's hand. Dr. Kamrul, please. Dr. Kamrul Islam?
Thank you, sir,
Yeah.
for giving me the floor. So thank you, Professor Fabio, for your nice presentation and giving insight of Brazil production. I have just a small question because you are growing the world, I mean, one of the world's largest 3,000 ton bean per hectare. So are you using OP variety or hybrids? This is my first question. I want to know. This is your, I mean, the cotton variety is open pollinated variety or it is hybrid? And secondly, what is the spacing between the cotton line to line and plant to plant you are using in the field?
Yeah, well, we are not using hybrid. It's conventional cultivars, but they are the genes for resistance to glyphosate and glufosinate are inserted as well for BT. So we have the third generation of BT cotton here. And the row spacing, the common is 90 centimeters for Mato Grosso and 76 centimeters for Bahia. And the final plant population ranges from 60,000 per hectare to 100,000 plants per hectare. It depends on the the sowing date.
Okay, thank you, Professor. As far as I understand that you are using open pollinated variety, but it is BT open pollinated variety, not hybrid.
Yes, not
Thank
hybrid.
you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kamal, and thank you, Dr. Esha. Dr. Terry Townsend, please. Dr. Terry?
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to unmute here. There we go. Thank you. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for extending the session to allow me to ask a question. And congratulations, Keshav and ICAC on this session. Dr. Fabio, I wanted one of your statements caught my eye, and I'm sure everybody. You said that raising yields is the best way to raise the sustainability of cotton because raising yields requires improvements in soil health. Advocates of organic cotton would argue the opposite. They say that what's important is to use organic methods, and then yields will be lower and you pay farmers premiums to make up for the difference. I'd just like to make sure that you really meant that. Raising yields is the best way to raise sustainability. And what would you answer to the advocates of organic cotton who would question that? Thank you.
Well, it's a big discussion, but for us in Brazil, the system that cotton is involved, we don't have any condition to making organic cotton here because, boll weevil, it's terrible, and if you don't apply the right insecticide, we'll harvest nothing. So it has a big challenge for the size of the farms. Some farms are about 1,000 hectares, 2,000, 10,000 hectares. So for growing cotton as organic cotton in these systems is very difficult. So I don't I don't believe that for us it's a option because we have pests such as boll weevil and also two important diseases that are very difficult to control, two fungal diseases, and we tried it in the past, and some birds are trying to do some regenerative agriculture trying to reduce the application of insecticide, but definitely they can perform 100% organic cotton because the pressure of the pests and diseases is too high. Since we are in the tropics with good weather for cotton, but also a good weather for the pests and disease. So in our system, the best way is to improve yields. I confirm my statement because this is the best way to reduce the land use. So given the market stuffs and open new markets, but to accommodate the production, but to increase the sustainability of the whole chain, in my opinion, it's the best way to improve yields, given the results that I've showed during the presentation.
Thank you very much, Professor Esha. And thank you, Dr. Terry, for asking that question. Thank you so much.
I would just say it's possible that perhaps this discussion illuminates the diversity of agronomic conditions around the world. And organic may be highly appropriate in some instances, but not universally. And I think we could discuss this for a long time, so we'll leave it at that. There are different regions of the world, different economic systems, different agronomic pressures, but it's a very interesting statement that I think deserves a great deal of consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Terry.
Actually, let me talk a little bit more quickly. Comment. As we can see, The problem is the money of the population. So the conventional or the most of the cotton needs to be produced to give the opportunity to people to buy the clothes. Organic cotton is for a niche of market, you know. So most of the people doesn't have enough money to buy the clothes. So I think that from a grower perspective is good to improve the rentability of the system. But in the other hand, when you see the society buying cotton, probably it will be from a conventional cotton farm due to the cost, the low cost of the production.
Thank you, Professor Esha. If there are no further questions, I think we will move to the next presentation. Once again, Dr. Esha, thank you so much for the excellent presentation and for your insights. And again, very inspirational. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. We now move to the next presentation, the last presentation in this session. It's on regenerative agriculture, implications for the textile industry. And the speaker is Dr. Kater Hake. Dr. Kater Hake actually needs no introduction. Everyone in the cotton world knows him, and it is not just now, but for decades and decades. Anyone who would want to know anything on cotton physiology, agronomy, and of course, many other sciences, look to his publications. And I don't have any doubt in my mind when I call him my guru. So, Dr. Kater Hake, I'd like to introduce you to the distinguished delegates today. Dr. Kater Hake is the Vice President of Agriculture and Environmental Research at the Cotton Incorporated, where he is responsible for the Cotton Production Research Program. Dr. Hake leads a team of 7 research directors who develop and support innovative problem-solving research with a network of 300 public sector scientists to increase the profitability and sustainability of cotton farming in the United States. Professor Hake came to Cotton Incorporated from a long career in cotton research and management. Most recently, he was the Vice President of Technology Development at Delta and Pineland Company. Dr. Hake has held positions at the Texas A&M University, the National Cotton Council, and the University of California. He holds 3 degrees from the University of California at Davis and at the Riverside, and was recently elected a Fellow of the American Association for Advancement of Science for his technology transfer and promotion of science in agriculture. He has a great distinguished career, and like I said, many cotton researchers are inspired by him. Professor Hake will continue to work in cotton, though he says he's retiring this December. I'm sure he will continue to serve all of us. Over to you, Dr. Hake.
Thank you, Keshav, for those very kind words. I appreciate that. Let's see. So I need to share my screen, and it says host disabled participant screen sharing. So I somehow need to be given the okay to share my screen. There we go. Share. And we'll go to full screen. Great. Can you see it there, Keshav? Can you see that? Can people see the screen? You're on mute there, Keshav.
Yes, Kater, we can.
Great, good. Thank you. Well, let me get started. I appreciate the opportunity to actually go third after these 2 just tremendous presentations that really cover the science and the technology of regenerative agriculture. It gives me the opportunity to then talk about the textile implications. And one thing I wanted to mention is we don't have too many opportunities to regenerate things. I've just returned from a long time with family. And so when we have the opportunity to regenerate things such as soil, we really need to just take that advantage and do that. Just a great opportunity to do that. Regenerative agriculture and cotton is top of the list for brands and retailers. I've just pulled off some of the news articles on their website where major brands and retailers are talking about regenerative agriculture. So it's moved to really the top of the list of environmental and social issues that brands and retailers are talking about. I think it's easiest to talk about what it is with pictures, and as Keshav mentioned, I have had the pleasure of working for cotton farmers for 42 years now, and so recently I've snapped some pictures in South Texas and Corpus Christi, a grower that is just starting to use strip till in a rotation and leaving as much residue on top. And in Mississippi, another grower that's using no-till and cover crops, actually a wheat cover crop here in Coffeyville. Other examples are Lubbock, Texas. This is a grower that for the first time went into a no-till, seeing some of his neighbors' success. He planted 1,000 acres of no-till. And you can see the stalks from the previous crop there. I think probably the strongest example of applying regenerative agricultural principles is the other picture we have here from Parma, Missouri. This is a grower that not only uses no-till at the northern edge of the cotton belt, where it's quite cold in the spring, but he also uses a mixed species cover crop that he plants actually before the cotton is harvested. And you can see the wonderful cotton coming through just the jungle of cover crop species that he's gotten coming up. I think another way we can visually talk about regenerative agriculture is what it's not. And in addition to the pleasure of working with growers, I also have the pleasure of hiking around Europe. And when I do, I like to snap photos of things that we don't see in the US and probably Brazil as well. And that's moldboard plows. And I don't want to imply by any means that this is the dominant practice in Europe, but if you want to see moldboard plows, this is where you need to go and to see that in the soil being turned over. So to get this presentation really organized, what I did, since we're focused on the implications for textile companies, I went to them and I pulled off primarily Sourcing Journal, but also their own websites. I pulled off 13 companies that were visible in the textile space that had made comments about regenerative agriculture to try to understand what their issues were and what they were saying. And so then created what we're all familiar with as a word cloud. And so this is the word cloud of the terms, the issues from 13 textile companies related to regenerative agriculture. As you can see, soil health, as the previous two speakers have talked about so elegantly, goes right to the top of the list. The next two words are carbon and climate. And for most people in regenerative agriculture, these two words are related, not quite synonymous, but we're concerned about carbon because of its impact on climate. And with climate concerns, we look to carbon. So we look to both the mitigation, the role that soil plays in mitigation, but also the role that regenerative agriculture plays in adaptation to the adverse impacts of climate. So it's logical to actually combine those two in a word cloud. So every time there was carbon, I replaced it with climate. And so this is the resulting word cloud that I think is really the most illustrative comment about what brands and retailers are saying about regenerative agriculture. Number one, it's the impact, the concerns about climate, and soil health is the way they're addressing it. You also see other issues: water, biodiversity, natural, organic cover crops, science, holistic, animals, but clearly climate, soil health are the top issues with the companies. So I've preferred, since I sit here in the U.S. and the bulk of my experience is the U.S., so I did work internationally for 6 years, to utilize a U.S.-centric definition that comes from field to market. And this is a U.S.-based coalition. Cotton has been a member of it since the inception about over 15 years ago, but it's now grown to include 26 different grower organizations, 17 brands and retailers, 12 members from civil society, which we call NGOs, and about 53 companies that support farmers, that provide inputs. And they have a wonderful statement about regenerative agriculture. I'll just read it to you. And you've got the links down below so you can read more about it. Using a systems-based perspective, regenerative agriculture sequesters carbon in the soil and intentionally improves soil health, biodiversity, water quality, and air quality while ensuring the viability of farm production. What a wonderful, wonderful statement about that. And then they go on and talk about the principles of regenerative agriculture. And it's important here to distinguish between practices and principle. These are the principles because right at the top, they also include local physical conditions and cultural. So that very much the principles are applied to local conditions, and these are minimizing soil disturbance, maintaining living roots in soil, continuously covering bare soil, maximizing diversity with regards to crops, soil microbes, and pollinators, and integrating livestock where it's feasible. Not every grower has the option to either have their own livestock or bring in other livestock. And also on this website, they do go into the differentiation between regenerative agriculture and sustainability, which they talk that it's more encompassing on human health, social issues, and economic impact. So regenerative agriculture, more narrow on climate and soil health. But I want to stress that there is no consensus on a definition or understanding of regenerative agriculture, because if we look to those 13 textile companies, 2 of them included organic as a requirement for regenerative agriculture, and another 2 listed no or reduced synthetic fertilizers as part of it. But clearly, all of them mentioned climate, and most of them mentioned soil health, 11 out of 13. So there's not consensus, but I think there's some strong overlap. I think because the textile industry so clearly understands organic, that it's helpful to have a discussion about regenerative agriculture in the context of organic. So I've tried to do that with some slides. Is regenerative agriculture just another organic? And I would say no. The pesticide concerns of food safety really drove consumer interest in organic, and primarily organic food. And my sister and her son and her husband are organic farmers in California. They produce organic food. Now, the food safety aspects of organic has had some interest in nutritional density, but the microbial contamination of food safety has not been prominent. So the food safety of organic has really been focused on pesticides. Another reason that I say no, that regenerative agriculture is not just another organic, is that although organic has tried to connect with consumers around 2 important issues, the environmental and social benefits, it's actually regenerative agriculture that has the top environmental concern right at the top, and that's climate change. And with the COP27, it's just been so evident around the world that that is the top consumer concern about the environment. I also want to talk a little bit about the social benefit of regenerative agriculture, because one of the things that we often miss is the benefits to small farm holders. I've had the pleasure of watching the adoption of no-till and other regenerative practices here in the U.S. And one of the wonderful characteristics is that it's a way that small farm holders can mechanize, because you don't need large, heavy, expensive tractors. You know, you need some equipment to plant and harvest. And at least in the US, we're spraying weeds and we're spraying for insects if we need to, as needed. So the scale can be both much smaller, and it can be also much larger in terms of the acres that a farmer can manage. So even though we often look at the large farms in Brazil and the US that are in no-till, and we think that's the connection, we shouldn't forget that that no-till facilitates small farmers to mechanize as well, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing for smallholders to do. I think another clear distinction is the practices versus restrictions or principles. I think the principles, as we've talked about with regenerative agriculture that we've mentioned, and I've got them here listed again, those are strong and they're being discussed. But the restrictions with regards to organic are set. If you're going to comply with the U.S. National Organic Program or the California Certified Organic Program or the Marin County Certified Organic Program, my sister has to comply with all three of those, then no pesticides, no synthetic fertilizers, and no GMOs. So for me, I'd like to graph things visually, and looking at the toolbox that farmers have is really big, and this is just a small set of it based on the discussion of regenerative agriculture and organic. But it's important that farmers have a very big toolbox, and that is because not only the challenges they face with markets and inputs, but now the expanded challenge they face with climate change. They need all the tools they can. And historically, I've talked about organic this way, is that organic largely overlaps conventional agriculture. There's just a couple things that are either excluded or very difficult. As we heard from Fabio, it is difficult to do organic cotton in some areas, particularly if it's a rainy area that supports a lot of insects and pathogens, foliar pathogens, and sprouting weeds. It makes no-till, zero-till, strip-till difficult. More recently, I've started to talk about the weed cultivation. The heavy reliance on weed cultivation is something which is really outside of the conventional agriculture, at least here in the US. We've gone to using other tools to control weeds besides cultivation. And I just want to mention this because the other speakers just touched on it briefly. I think it's really important to connect regenerative agriculture to weed control in two really strong ways that growers have observed, but scientists have also backed up as well, that if you leave weed seeds on the surface of soil, such as you have with no-till, their viability drops much more rapidly than if you protect them by burying them in the soil. Just a really nice multi-site study in weed science, starting with Palmer amaranth, which is our most pernicious weed, and the viability drops very fast within a year and very negligible. In fact, other studies in Texas and Georgia that further they show that even a greater drop after 3 years. But so leaving weed seeds on the surface, particularly our small-seeded Palmer amaranth, they decline a lot faster. And this has helped growers move toward a weed seed we call eradication, but really it's we're minimizing them from a field. The second aspect of regenerative agriculture is the use of cover crops, particularly where the winters are reasonably warm and we can grow significant biomass of cover crops such as rye. These small seeded weeds, we can help retard them from germinating or emerging through the residue. Still rely on pre-emerge herbicides. As you can see in the example, we have some weeds coming through the rye-only cover, and then foliar herbicides for escapes. And one of the exciting technologies that's coming along, and it's being employed in some countries already where the regulatory permits it, is the spot spraying with drones. And the idea of sending a drone up there that recognizes the few escapes and treating them is just a wonderful way to really minimize the herbicides and yet move closer to that weed seed eradication. So back to the discussion of organic, I think if we put the regenerative agricultural principles on there, that these are the ones that really stand out. And as I mentioned, Brazil just been a absolute leader in that. Why I use their term as well, zero till. And as I mentioned, we have growers that strip till as well, trying to leave as much residue on the surface. It's important to recognize that regenerative agriculture encompasses a wide range of practices on that. So how does this relate to cotton? Because that was the title that I chose, is how does this connect to cotton textiles? And if we look at organic agriculture driven by pesticides, cotton textiles are a food crop. And as we all know, they're washed during processing. And so it's very different from the food safety issue. Regenerative agriculture, on the other hand, is driven by concerns about climate change. As has been mentioned by Fabio, very difficult to adopt organic agriculture in some areas, particularly where it's rainy, and long growing seasons facilitate insects and weeds and diseases. Much easier to adopt it. In fact, the U.S. adoption has been in the area where it's extremely dry, right on the edge of deserts, where there's a really limited rainfall and some irrigation. And it's important to remember that regenerative agriculture, the principles discussion that we have, they're locally relevant, so they can be adopted globally. They can, they need to be looked at what is both culturally and physically possible on that. The brands and retailers are very interested in certification and verification, and there are programs with organic for that. They're difficult on the verification just because there's no measurable difference in the fiber, but also because bales are blended in the spinning. And clearly regenerative agriculture has those same challenges in the certification verification, but the current programs also, they rely on relationships with either specific growers or grower organizations. And we heard a little about that yesterday from Graham Soley of the USDA about the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol, which is a grower-based certification verification program that includes soil health. So we see that increasing. So let me just get to the conclusions about the opportunities for textiles, cotton textiles, brands, and retailers. I think we clearly have a consensus on the objective of regenerative agriculture is to address climate change with soil health. Clearly, that's a problem. And we're also seeing that regional certification verifications that include soil health, they exist and can expand to meet textile needs. I think that we need, as Terry Townsend mentioned, we need to have open discussions about big issues. And one that we need to have is, I think we should have a stronger discussion about what is regenerative agriculture. As I mentioned, there's a couple brands and retailers that make it synonymous with cotton. And the reason I think that's really important is that there's no confusion about what it is not. You know, if you don't have clarity about what something is, it's difficult to have clarity about what it's not. And we have this wonderful opportunity that regenerative agriculture is not polyester. And that really allows us to do something that's just a unique opportunity within cotton's last 100 years, in my opinion, is the expanding consumer concern about microplastics and climate change. That's just an incredibly powerful opportunity for cotton. But we've got to strengthen our own role, both production and processing in our environment, so that it's really clear what our impacts are and what the cotton industry is doing to continually to improve in addressing those concerns that consumers have. So I'd like to just conclude with another picture, a couple of pictures. The one of the path is one that I took just a couple of days ago, walking around my parents' house. And you can see the path, and you can also see the area that's not touched. And I had one grower tell me that he considered regenerative agriculture is trying to push it back to that natural environment, trying to push it in that direction. He knows he'll never get there, but at the same time extracting economic value from the land. Just a wonderful sentiment about that. The other one I think is a lot more practical and related. This is Phil Bauer at USDA, and he's had a 30-year corn cotton rotation with two different practices, no-till, but also conventional till. And it's really clear the impact on the soil health associated with that long-term no-till and rotation. And with that, Keshav, I will turn it back and stop screen sharing. Let's see.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Keita. Thank you.
Keshav, can you set? Oh, there we go. Good.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Keita. That was brilliant and very enjoyable. Thank you so much for presenting. All the three speakers were absolutely brilliant. They complemented each other, and the narrative completes a loop and addresses the topic of this technical seminar. Keita, a special word of thanks to you for analyzing and presenting what the textile brands and retailers, how they understand regenerative agriculture and what they expect. This is so very important to all of us. Professor Ratan Lal started with the soil from below the ground, and Dr. Fabio Escher took us above the ground while connecting it with the ground. And Keita completed the loop, as I said, with all these three, but taking it further into the value chain, into the textile value chain. So thank you very much, all the three speakers. And I'd now like to open the floor for any questions. I don't see any hands raised. So, okay, well, the quick ones. I think Mr. Rajiv Barwa raised first. So, Rajiv, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Haik, and for this outstanding presentation. I just wanted to ask you, it seems that we are creating lots of labels. And what do you think would be the difference between sustainable agriculture and regenerative agriculture? Of course, you stressed very well that the climate concerns are actually driving the regenerative agenda. But if you look in the smallholder context, end of the day, we are going back to the same scientists like Dr. Venugopalan, Dr. Kranti, and what they were talking 10 years ago, maybe, on the link between soil, weather, the reduction of tillage. I don't think the knowledge has advanced or the principles have always been there. It's just that I think we are, sometimes I feel, I was at a conference yesterday, we had a launch of a regenerative alliance. And I sometimes feel, is it probably old wine in new bottle? I don't know.
I think that's a wonderful question. And I think the use of the term regenerative agriculture as a label, I think that's going to evolve. What I hope happens, and it was really mentioned that the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol is a grower-centric. And I know there are other grower-centric certifications or programs that have soil health as part of their objective. And so I don't think it's necessary to put a unique label or brand on it. I think the grower organizations are the ones that they need to come up with what is locally relevant for them and what their growers could do and continually improve. And I recommend that the growers take the lead on the definitions and not let let the brands and retailers, to be quite blunt, define it, because the locally relevant is so critical. And so that would be my recommendation. I hope that it doesn't turn into a global standard, because then you really lose the opportunity to make it locally relevant.
Thank you, Dr. Haig. I now request Dr. Muhammad Kamrul Islam to please take the floor.
Thank you, sir, for giving me the chance. Actually, I gave it to get a new idea about the regenerative agriculture, a comprehensive and full idea. As you said, that it gives an idea from the field to the textile value chain. It's a whole across the process. And Professor Keita also talked about the principles and also about the certification system. But I like to know that in case of organic production system, there is a well-established standards for different states. Like for EU, European Union, they have their organic standards. For USA, they have their organic standards, or for Japan, they have their organic standards. So my question is there any standards for the well-established standards for the regenerative agriculture?
No, there's not. And I do want to stress that they're not incompatible. I think that organic production can be regenerative agriculture and can meet that. Controlling weeds is a real challenge if you're not using herbicides or mechanical tillage. But very much there's growers that successfully do that. But at this point, I do not see. There are some organizations that are trying to put out what they define as regenerative agriculture standards. But I think, at least from a U.S.-centric standpoint, we're seeing that there is not certainly not a legal definition that's adopted by USDA.
Thank you, Dr. Haig, and thank you, delegates, for asking those excellent questions. Thank you very much. If there are no further questions, I'd once again like to thank all the three speakers, Professor Ratan Lal, Dr. Fabio Escher, and Dr. Keita Haig. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your knowledge, your experiences, your insights. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Keshav, for your leadership. Appreciate that.
And thank you, Dr. Kranthi. And thank you from me to the presenters for a very interesting session. Before we lead into the third and open session of today, I think we could do with a quick comfort break. So we will resume at 10 minutes past. So that's gives you just over 5 minutes to have a comfort break. And I will then introduce the session after that. So,
Kai, if I may just say, we have one more topic, which is the presentation of the 3 topics for the next technical seminar. I think that must be before the third open session.
Okay, well, are you going to introduce that then?
Yes, I think. Yes.
Okay, well, do you want to do that now? Let's do that now, Keshav, then we can have a clear break between that and the last session.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Kai. Thank you so much. Like Catalin, do we have the presentation? This is about the proposed topics for the 2023 technical seminar. Carolyn, are you there? Maria?
Yes, yes, 1 second.
Yeah, thanks. While the team is working on it, I'm just taking the liberty to read out the 3 topics on the proposed technical seminar for 2023. The 3 topics are, the first topic is women in cotton production and processing and challenges of equity. Second topic is recent technological innovations as game changers on cotton farms. The third topic is climate smart technologies for cotton production. So I'll wait for the team to upload the presentation. This may just take about 5 minutes. Excellent, thank you. Carolyn, do we have my recorded presentation, or do you want me to read this out?
Keshav, you need to read it. We don't have it.
Okay, thank you so much. The working paper has actually been circulated, and I'll quickly read because these passages, reading the passages might take a little while, but nevertheless, like I said, the first topic, it's on women in cotton production and processing and challenges of equity. Agriculture is believed to have evolved largely due to women, as they may have been responsible for the earliest domestication of croplands. A study conducted by the International Trade Center, ITC, showed that women across the world are mostly employed in cotton farms for picking, catering, planting, and field management. According to ICAC data, globally, women own nearly 40% of land for cotton farms and may constitute 60 to 70% of the workforce on cotton farms in developing countries. I'm sorry. The ITC study points out that women are paid less than men, and these gender-based wage disparities are observed in many countries. About 7.5% of garment workers, about 75% of garment workers globally are women, yet they are often underrepresented in leadership positions in their workplaces and communities. The world is becoming increasingly aware of the fact that empowered women not only empower society, but also catalyze its growth. A study by the DFID in 2010 showed that the total agriculture output of Africa could increase by up to 20% if women's access to agriculture inputs were equal to that of men. Although women play such a pivotal role in cotton production and processing, their contribution is often overlooked in social, economic, and political spheres. Women are far less empowered than men because they face structural barriers that limit their access to land, information, finance, infrastructure, technologies, and markets. This technical seminar, the proposed technical seminar, will discuss ways to mainstream gender equity and women empowerment in cotton production. So that was the first topic. The second topic is on recent technological innovations as game changers on cotton farms. Scientific advancements in the past few years have led to innovations in all fields, including agriculture and cotton production. Technological innovations hold the key to progress in agriculture productivity and sustainability. Innovations that are establishing themselves as game changers relate to communication technologies, mobile farm applications, social media platforms, virtual reality training modules, weather prediction and forecasting, robotics-based machinery, drone-mediated crop monitoring and pesticide application, remote sensing and management, sensors and decision support system for pest management and nutrient management, cloud computing, digital technologies to access global and local information on soils, weather, input and markets, biotechnology, genetic engineering, genome editing, marker-assisted breeding, CRISPR-Cas for improved crop varieties, biofertilizers and biopesticides, rapid diagnostic kits to detect pests, diseases, nutrient deficiencies in GM crops, nanotechnologies to enhance fertilizer use efficiency, water use efficiency, and pesticide use efficiency, micro irrigation such as drip irrigation, irrigation water ATM technologies, laser leveling, structured water, biochar, enhanced carbon sequestration techniques, rapid soil testing kits, precision farming, and regenerative technology. That's quite a mouthful. The technical seminar will highlight the latest technological innovations that could have a game-changing impact on cotton farming in large-scale and smallholder farms across the world. So there are a large plethora of technologies that we could address them on. Now, the third topic is climate-smart technologies for cotton production, which is being discussed all across the globe now. The United Nations Climate Change Conference of the Parties, which was COP26, held in Glasgow, Scotland, and the recent one, COP27, held in Egypt, that was in Sharm el-Sheikh, asked countries to come forward with emission reduction targets for 2030 that align with reaching net zero emissions by 2050 to keep 1.5 degrees or less of global warming within our reach. Cotton production practices emit greenhouse gases, mainly comprised of carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, and methane that cause global warming. Greenhouse gases are emitted mainly from the use of agrochemicals and consumption of fuel and energy used for farm machinery, irrigation, and transport. Different crop production systems emit different levels of greenhouse gases. Research showed that greenhouse gas emissions from cotton farms were 2.37 tons of carbon dioxide equivalents per ton of lint produced in Pakistan, 1.6 tons in Australia, 1.47 tons in Iran, 2.93 tons in China, India, Pakistan, Tajikistan, and Turkey, and 1.7 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per ton of lint in the United States. Thus, the total global annual emissions from cotton farms may be estimated to be 57.2 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent greenhouse gases. Recent studies have shown that several climate-smart technologies have the potential to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and enhance carbon sequestration, while concomitantly resulting in improvement of sustainable crop productivity. For example, a recent report by Cotton Leads in 2019 highlights the potential of zero-till, just one technology, zero-till technology-based cotton crop biomass in capturing carbon dioxide to show that an acre of no-till cotton actually stores 150 kilograms more of atmospheric carbon than it emits during cotton production, meaning that cotton's contribution to carbon equation can be net negative. The technical seminar will discuss the latest developments in climate-smart technologies, such as climate resilience, drought-tolerant cotton varieties, regenerative agriculture, biochar, nanotechnologies for input use efficiency, biological alternatives to synthetic chemical fertilizers, biodiversity conservation-based pest management, and government policies to promote climate-smart technologies and reward carbon farming. So these are the three topics, ladies and gentlemen, and the respected delegates. Thank you so much. Kai, if you may kindly lead if there's any consensus on any of the three topics, please. I see Dr. Talpur raise his hand. Can we invite him for his opinion, please? Dr. Talpur, please. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Kasho. I would like to somehow discuss all these three topics. The first topic, I think so, that doesn't qualify for discussion as a technical seminar. We may place it at any other session. It can be discussed in a session. It is definitely the significance of the participation of women cannot be denied. in the cotton sector. However, it is not. I don't think so. Okay, it's suitable for a technical seminar. Whereas the option number 2 is, as per my understanding, is the best one. That may add, that discussion may add towards the cotton production systems, and even the topic number third topic can be even included in the topic 2, so that we even can discuss the technologies. We can discuss the climate change as well within the topic 2. So the 2 and 3 can be merged, and the 2 would be the best option, I think so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Any other delegate? Any opinion, please? Kai, if you may please lead on this.
I think if we've only had one comment, but I think then if no one else is objecting, then that, I suppose, constitutes some consensus at least. So perhaps we should go ahead with that, Keshav.
Thank you, Kai. Thank you very much. That actually concludes the session of the technical seminar. And thank you very much, Kai. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very conscious that we lost some time due to the technical difficulties we were experiencing earlier. But I am going to give you a very, very, very short comfort break, and we will start at 20 minutes past on the dot. So please make your stay very short.
Thank you, Kai.
Well, welcome back and welcome to the third open session and our last session for today, which is an extremely important session. The topic, which is regulatory policies by governments that could negatively affect the consumption of natural fibers, was a subject that is chosen by the private sector via the newly constituted Private Sector Advisory Council. So I can't emphasize enough how important this session is, and I'm delighted to introduce the chair of the session, Mr. Peter Wakefield. Mr. Wakefield was born just outside of Liverpool, which is, as you all know, the home of cotton for England. And he was born into a very well-known cotton family. And Peter joined the company Associated Surveyors and Test Laboratories Company Limited in Thailand, and after 3 years was invited to take up the position of manager in the Taiwan office of Edward T. Robertson and Son. In 1990, Peter returned to Liverpool to take up the position of European manager for Edward T. Robertson and Son. But in 1993, a major change happened, which resulted in the purchase of parts of Edward T. Robertson, thus forming a new company, Wakefield Inspection Services, which Peter assumed the position of Group Managing Director. Peter Wakefield completed his term as President of the International Cotton Association in 2006, his term as President. And on completion of that, he was invited to be Chairman of the Committee for International Cooperation Between Cotton Associations, or ICAC as it is known. And he held that position for 2 years. But in 2007, Peter decided to relocate to Shanghai, where he also looks after the company's interests in China. However, with travel being restricted from early 2020, Peter moved to Taipei, where he is currently based. So with that introduction, I'll please hand over to you, Peter. I can't see you at the moment, so I'm hoping you're there.
Thank you very much, Kai, and welcome everyone to this session. We have actually prepared some presentations for you, so I would ask the Secretariat if you could please start playing those presentations for us, please. Good morning and welcome everyone to this session organised by the Private Sector Advisory Council. Let me start by telling you what we are not here to do. The purpose of this session is not to criticise any other competing fibre. We understand there is a place for all different fibres, including the ones that we all in the cotton industry consider as competitors. What we're here to do is to tell you that we understand this need for different fibres. However, in all ways, we need all fibres to be treated equally in every respect. Before we get to the meat of our discussions, please let me provide a quick description of how the PSAC is constituted. Membership of the PSAC is open to cotton organisations that are international associations, that is, organisations with an area of work and influence at the global level. Regional associations, organisations with an area of work and influence covering more than 2 countries in the same region. National associations, that is, organisations with an area of work and influence that originates from or is under the auspices of a specific country. Each organisation is represented by a nominated individual, so the comments and views that we are receiving and we discuss are not from ICAC employees, but from volunteers giving up their free time. These are the voting members of the PSAC. In addition, NGOs, or organisations that are independent of government and are not for profit, may also be invited to the PSAC as observers and are welcome to participate and engage in conversations during our meetings. However, they are unable to vote. In addition to NGO, membership of the PSAC is open to qualifying organizations from countries that are not ICAC members for a period of 1 year and with observer status. In the coming months, we shall be inviting NGOs and additional observers to join the PSAC. Within the PSAC, we have 4 permanent committees, one each for producers and ginners, trade and other cotton-related activities, spinners, weavers, and machinery manufacturers, and finally, brands and retailers. Members of each permanent committee are made up of individuals representing a national, regional, or international organization from within their area of the cotton trade, textile, and retail value chain. Each committee has a chair and a vice chair, plus one other elected individual, and all 3 sit on the Executive Council. Currently, I am the interim chair of the Executive Council, and I sit on the Permanent Committee for Trade and Cotton-related Activities on behalf of the International Cotton Association. I can confirm that all committees have been meeting in 2022, and it is the outcome of some of those deliberations that we shall be talking to you today. In the meantime, for more information on the member organizations and their representatives on the PSAC, I invite you to the ICAC website and look under the tab Committees and Networks. For your information, through its chair, the PSAC reports directly to the ICAC Standing Committee and the Steering Committee through their regular meetings. That tells you a little about the groups who will be talking to you today, but why did we create the PSAC in the first place? When we look at the global cotton industry, we see a very complex landscape. When we get into the nuances of talking about responsible practices, sustainability, authenticity, transparency, traceability, regenerative, organic, and more, we can see that this leads to a lot of confusion and strife because that messaging can't be ubiquitous and will by default arbitrarily exclude certain regions, groups, due to the variability of cotton production, processes, standards, and capabilities. Then add to that mix different types of fibers, be they other natural fibers or even man-made fibers. How is this going to be managed? Who is going to manage it? Who is going to be responsible for the messaging? What qualifications are going to be placed on the subject matter? Who gets to decide what those qualifications are? And who gets to say what is valid or not? Those questions were put to us by one of our members back in May of last year. And in trying to answer some of this, we have been debating, discussing, and trying to inform. But as we debate, organizations, and more importantly, governments, are starting to recognize this lack of understanding, the lack of clarity of systems, and thus are starting to act. Action has started within the European Commission with their proposed initiative on substantiating green claims. Germany has enacted a due diligence law. Please do not mistake this discussion by the PSAC as opposition to these initiatives. We actually support them. But our task is to highlight potential issues within certain current methodologies, including the life cycle analysis and LCA, and the product environmental footprint, PEF. These are terms that we're all going to become very used to in the short term. But as far as cotton is concerned, we hope that in this short term, they have not already been accepted as fact in their current forms. You will hear in our presentations that the current PEF process is 10 years old, and that in the cotton and textile world, research has advanced tremendously. You will hear that by using these old formats, we are trying to compare products from a natural origin to those from man-made sources, but we're doing it with a flawed recipe. Without trying to steal the thunder from our speakers, we can see at a glance that no account has been taken for the full impact of fossil fuels from the point of extraction to the manufacture of the PET pellets, to production practices, to microplastic pollution, to renewability and biodegradability, and the duration of service life. Our objective here is not to complain, but rather to provide practical recommendations for governments and all interested parties to take into consideration. For example, we shall explain more on microplastic indicators, plastic waste indicators, circularity indicators, the product environmental footprint PEF system, LCA methodology, why considering other socio-economic factors apart from the four covered above is also important, consultations with private sector representatives, the resilience that cotton is bringing to the world communities. In July 2022, the German Parliament passed a law on corporate due diligence to prevent human rights violations in the supply chain, in which supply chains are defined as all of a company's products and services, and all steps, both at home and abroad, required to manufacture the products and provide the services, starting with extraction of raw materials and ending with a delivery to the end consumer. We must remember that this includes all products and all services, and that means our raw material, our trade, our shipping, our warehousing, our inspection, everything will be affected. So the next question is, who will be directly affected by this law? Well, commencing in 2023, it is any German company with 3,000 employees or more 3,000 or more employees in Germany. Commencing 2024, i.e. after a 1-year grace period, companies in Germany with 1,000 or more employees will have to comply. However, all suppliers to those companies are also affected indirectly, just not with fines or legal obligations. What are the specific obligations that will, beginning next year, affect companies in Germany? Well, companies must establish a risk management system and conduct risk analysis. They must adopt a policy statement of corporate human rights strategy, anchor preventative measures, immediately take corrective action when violations are identified, establish complaints procedures, and create documentation and reporting for due diligence fulfillment. Enforcement of the law will be controlled by the Federal Office for Economic Affairs and Export Control. Penalties can be a fine of up to 8 million euros or up to 2% of annual sales, and exclusion from the right to bid on public contracts for up to 3 years. Going forward, the big question is, what governments will enact similar laws in their own countries? So next, we are going to hear from the chair of each of the permanent committees. Each presentation shall follow one after the other. So I will take this opportunity to give you a short introduction to our next 4 speakers. First will be Mr. Francisco Ferreira de Santos. Francisco is an agronomist by training. He is, since 2005, the CEO of the JFS Group in Mozambique, a company founded in 1897. In addition, Francisco is the chairman of the Mozambique Cotton Association and also the vice chair of the Mozambique Industry Association. Francisco shall be speaking on behalf of the Producers and Ginners Permanent Committee. Mr. Cliff White. Cliff is a current director of the Australian Cotton Association, but is also a past president in 2012 of the International Cotton Association, and has also served on the board of the Texas Cotton Association and the American Cotton Shippers Association. With 42 years of experience in trading cotton in all corners of the world, Cliff currently works with Only Cotton and is based in Brisbane, Australia. Cliff shall be speaking on behalf of the Trade and Other Cotton-Related Activities Permanent Committee. Mr. Mohammed Anis Khwaja. Anis, in his professional life, is a director of the Mahmood Group, Mahmood Textile Mills Limited in Pakistan. He is also the vice chair of the All Pakistan Textile Manufacturers Association. In addition, Anis is a member of the Export Development Fund in Islamabad, a member of the Pakistan Business Council in Karachi, and also has a list of other directorships and memberships so long that we do not have a time to list them all here. Anis shall be speaking on behalf of the Spinners, Weavers and Machinery Manufacturers Permanent Committee. Finally, we have Mr. Nate Herman. Nate oversees the American Apparel and Footwear Association's Policy Department, managing the association's lobbying, policy and regulatory affairs activities, and in addition leads AAFA's Corporate Social Responsibility, that is CSR program, formulating and implementing CSR policy and representing AAFA and the industry on CSR issues before governments, NGOs, and other key stakeholders. Nate shall be speaking on behalf of the Brands and Retailers Permanent Committee. Gentlemen, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, for the introduction and the opportunity to speak today. My name is Cliff White, and I'm the current Chairman of the Merchants Committee. Our committee appreciates the opportunity to present the comments to you today. Throughout these comments, I believe it is clear to see that prior to our recent meetings, the level of awareness between committee members concerning legislation that can potentially restrict access for cotton products was extremely limited. Consequently, the main thing that I would like to highlight and illustrate today is the apparent unfairness in the processes adopted by various governments that would appear to make policy decisions about specific industries without widely consulting industry representatives. In the particular cases of the EU Commission and the German government, policies were debated or are being debated without established consultations with the industry representatives. Consultation process outside of Europe would seem to our committee to be extremely limited. And therefore, as a result, the engagement with the global cotton industry is extremely narrow in scope. The European market would appear to be making it as difficult as possible to access their markets with finished goods. And this in turn ultimately impacts the spinner, the merchant, and also the producer. A more thorough comprehension is required by all. Through the PSAC meetings held this year, we have raised awareness about the regulatory policies of some governments, which, for example, has included discussions on the EU's Green Claims Initiative, under which they will be using the PEF methodology to establish how we proclaim something to be green in the textile world going forward. Many of our members who represent the cotton value chain will be directly impacted by these legislations. They were not even aware of these proceedings and were shocked when they fully understood its potential negative impacts on the cotton industry. The industry needs to be heard now before it is too late, if it is not already too late. We have a much better story to tell than what is being portrayed. However, our voice needs to be louder, and it must be an industry-wide concerted effort. The ICAC platform gives us the ideal opportunity to go directly to government. And hopefully after this plenary, there will be more questions that government representatives want answered or clarified. Now, let me make it quite clear that we are not a group of scientists, nor are we legal professionals who trawl through all the legislation. We are mostly involved in the trade of raw cotton, so we stand to possibly be corrected on some of these points. However, there were some significant concerns which were raised by the committee members in our meetings, and I would like to relate some of those comments now. I think firstly, and most importantly, product environmental footprint, otherwise known as PEF. PEF certainly does not present a level playing field for man-made and natural fibers. The current state of PEF methodology does not recognize or give any credence to the positive social and economic impacts of producing natural fibers. The PEF methodology should take into account consideration of microplastic pollution. It ignores the income effect in major cotton producing and consuming areas, many of whom are in undeveloped countries in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. What natural fiber production contributes to the economies of these regions of the world, no other viable economic activity does. History has shown us that the economic development follows. None of these impacts are included in the PET process. We now do understand that the PET process has been delayed due to COVID-19. However, we remain unsure of the final timeline. Life cycle assessment. There appears to be endless ways to have a life cycle assessment. But on the face of it, cotton should present a very good LCA story. There is undoubted scope for more research studies in this area that portray cotton in a favorable light. Different LCAs with better methodologies should be evaluated. An LCA plus approach, which does not compare fibers to one another, could be debated on. The Higg index, the often quoted but largely unexplained index that requires a more detailed understanding in the cotton trade. Supposedly, there are multiple deficiencies in the Higg index. However, given that one needs to pay to be a member just to get access to these calculations, it doesn't present a picture of openness. Now, how can we oppose the processes adopted by the EU Commission, German government? Well, communication with organisations associated or working in raw cotton, like the ICAC, Cotton Made in Africa and others, is absent. Communication with the cotton community can play a very important role before these standards are set and rolled out. Now, I'd just like to make some general comments made by our committee members to establish the relevance of our cotton fibre. Cotton's water footprint must accurately be counted by differentiating the countries that wear cotton clothing. Developing ASEAN nations, as well as countries like Taiwan and China, mainly hand wash and line dry their laundry. This reduces the carbon footprint by roughly 1/3 and does not use the 40 gallons of water a normal washing machine uses. If these cultural differences are not considered or calculated, then surely the PET standards are flawed. Polyester does dry faster than cotton, which uses lower electricity, therefore lowers its PET score. But again, if we compare to line drying balances, that gives a much better score for cotton. Lowering of the synthetics PET is skewed when considering most of the ASEAN countries line dry their cotton clothing. Cotton is currently the only fibre that can be easily spun with lower end technologies used in ASEAN countries. As the staple fibre is the growing trend of adding to locally grown agricultural byproducts, such as pineapple fibres, it is the gateway for developing nations to increase their profitability by the agricultural industries. This growing trend is seen as a way of lowering the final PET, mainly cotton textiles. It is also the gateway to making textile products that have a healthier end of life. An oversimplification of a tag that just uses a number to represent such a complicated system of quantifying PET limit will be detrimental to the development of new technologies and techniques that will lower the overall environmental impact of textiles made from cotton and natural fibres. Our members gave a few examples of certain processes. So, for example, natural dyes. They can only be used on natural fabrics, not synthetics. They are processed and finished at only 60 degrees on natural fabrics, rather than synthetic dyes on polyester at between 98 to 135 degrees. This is energy saving. They also use 65% less water. The water treatment process for water released back into the environment is much less caustic. Organic dyes can only be used on cotton and natural fibers. This coloring process has no water treatment after use and can be immediately disposed with no environmental damage. It is also energy saving at lower temperatures and using 65% less water. It's important to note that neither of the certification systems in place create a certification program that is internationally accepted. Fabric suppliers hesitate to use them due to brands not being able to quantify benefits to consumers. Only cotton can be used as a staple fiber for the base of new R&D projects, the agricultural byproduct fiber, or ABF. Using byproducts of other agricultural industries then supports local economies of emerging ASEAN nations. It also lowers the carbon footprint by using existing fibers that otherwise would be burnt in the fields, releasing carbon directly into the atmosphere. Cotton blended with other byproducts should get carbon credit, water footprint credit, and social quality credits. None of these systems of quantifying have any of these benefits in existence. In summary, we have to be very careful in what we wish for. And we definitely have to be careful that rules and regulations are not put in place before potential unintended consequences can be thought about and discussed. Otherwise, in the coming years, we could have a catastrophic impact on developing nations and people's livelihoods. There must be better awareness globally of what is being proposed. Thank you for listening to my comments today. I wish a very successful plenary. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Francisco Hertzat, the current chair of the Producers Committee coming from Mozambique, Southern Africa. I'd like to start my presentation with a quick question. What is the impact of cotton in our rural community? We heard some important facts about cotton yesterday. We start work to be highlighted again. Regarding employment, cotton farms are a way of living for more than 21 million farm families across the globe, 99% of which reside in India, China, Africa, and Pakistan. This provides around 2.5 billion man-days of employment. And about water irrigation and fertilizer, cotton occupies 2.3% of the world's cropland and uses 2.8% of the global fertilizer. Cotton occupies 4.3% of the global irrigated area, but uses only 1.7% of the total irrigated water. In fact, in low-income countries, particularly in Africa, cotton is completely regulated. Cotton is a vibrant producing industry in all continents, working towards the global agenda. In fact, it tends to be a leader and an anchor crop in most of the producing countries, not only in the oil countries with state-of-the-art technology and tools, ensuring optimal utilization of inputs, but also in low-income countries, where cotton tends to have a robust setup, providing training, inputs, and markets to millions of farming families, being a fundamental driver of innovation and positive change. Moreover, cotton is a drought-resistant crop, which makes it even more relevant in the current environment. 2021-22 was a particularly difficult crop season in my region, East Africa region, with very rapid rain, and the cotton ended up being one of the less affected crops and providing basic livelihood conditions for the farming family. We also see cotton as a great, fantastic tool in climate change, particularly cotton coming from the global south, with low level of irrigation and inputs, where most of the employment is generated. Cotton lint is almost entirely carbon, And the cotton plant is a magic plant that transforms atmospheric carbon into usable carbon. Atmospheric carbon becomes clothes. And so let's wear our cotton in a responsible way and contribute to the global agenda. Well, I thank the chair for introducing the topic and presenting a summary about legislation. And taking the conversation forward, the members of the Producers Committee discussed this legislation and have 2 points to highlight. First is regarding the PEF methodology used in the EU Commission's legislation. Based on our knowledge about the timeline, the PEF process has been delayed due to COVID-19, and we are unsure of the final timeline. As we understand, the original plan was to have the final proposal in front of the EU Parliament by June 2023 for consideration. A November public commission is going to cover the way forward much more clearly. However, if the members of Parliament agree on an issue, we both happen seamlessly, legislation could be in place 6 months later, and in the case with single-use plastics recently. The European Commission is talking about how to present product information to consumers. To substantiate green claims, brands must label their products using the same PEF methodology, showing how environmentally sustainable the product is. The risk we see here is not necessarily the natural fibers versus polyester debate, but rather that the PEF methodology as it stands today does not take into consideration key elements like plastic waste, microplastics, circularity, renewability, biodegradability, amongst others, which set natural fibers apart from man-made fibers. If these elements are included, then we may expect that man-made fibers may get a bad score, or should we say, the fair score. Once this legislation becomes a law, it will impact textile suppliers to the EU region, as well as the entire producing and supply chain. EU is the biggest consumption market. If PEF methodology is not adjusted, cotton products made from cotton produced globally may get downgraded or downrated against other man-made fibers, affecting the entire cotton community, meaning 21 rural families. IWTO has seen evidence of this already in the wool industry. The IWTO has spoken to the brands which have avoided using wool because of the heat index. And this is a government-sanctioned methodology that does not treat natural fibers well in comparison. In summary, there seems to be misalignment between what the Commission wants to achieve and the tool they are using to do it. We would recommend on this point 1 that the PEF methodology should be revised to provide a level playing field for man-made and natural fibers. Our second point is regarding German supply chain and due diligence law. This law will start to be effective from 2023 onwards. Even considering the advanced state of this law, we believe it is opportune to share our concerns. Besides its direct impact, once EU has its policies in place, several other countries tend to follow, which raises its potential impact. Starting from 2023, as part of complying with German legislation, businesses will conduct risk assessments, meaning detailed audits for the entire supply chain. This also means that the average number of audits per participant will increase. The businesses should be better prepared, but all the reporting and risk management systems are hardly suitable for small and medium companies that, without support mechanisms, will face the risk of exclusion instead of having the opportunity to change and to improve. Due diligence is a necessary step towards the transformation of all value chains, including corporate. The challenge is to find the optimal process and tools, a process able to include and motivate all producers, but particularly the ones that have the greater need with lower scale and with low income and in the low income countries. Responsible business is not to simply manage risk and eliminate challenging origin. Responsible business should be to use markets and businesses as a transforming tool, giving the same opportunities to all. These are the 2 points the Producers Committee felt relevant to share. and we thank you for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me the floor and present our case. My name is Anis Khwaja. I am based out of Pakistan, and I am the chairman for the Textile Committee in ICAC. I'm here to play my part in representing the voice of the committee and making the case for why we feel, what we feel needs to be done better in terms of the sustainability roadmap that we have with regards to PEF coming in along the way as well. So we have been deliberating this a lot, and a lot of discussion has been revolving around what needs to be done better to make sure that the sustainability we are actually hoping for is done and completed in a way that it is more sustainable and it is more long-term as well. So in my next few minutes that I will be speaking to you here, and I will be making the case of why we feel and justify where we feel the loopholes are and how we can fill up that as well. Rest assured, all of us here are very much in for sustainability. We all want this to happen. So this effort of what we've done as a committee is also focusing more on highlighting the issues and not just highlighting them, but also working a way forward with that as well. So let me just build up with the case that when we talk about natural fiber, that is cotton itself, that is the pure reason for our existence today in the textile industry as well. So let's not take away the credit from the natural fiber cotton. We understand that a lot of studies have been done where more recycling and sustainability initiatives have been taken. But have we done enough effort on the cotton side as well? Have we done enough effort to make sure that the natural fibers are more sustainable as well? The reason why I plead this case is because when we go back into this industry, we have to understand and we have to quantify the number of livelihoods which are also associated with this. So look at a country like, let's say, Pakistan or India for that sake, and look at the cotton produced here. Look at how many households are dependent on that. Look at how many women are dependent on that. Look at how many people who have their children going to the schools because of this cotton industry and the growing of cotton that they have. So before we go into just the drive of sustainability, let's talk about the sustainable livelihoods that we're creating as well through this industry. So this is an important aspect where we feel that what we can do in this natural fiber cotton, we cannot do it completely in other elements of man-made fibers. Going into a bit more details of some of the factors where we feel the documentation, the process of PEF has left. We feel that some of the elements come in terms of, let's say, we've actually quantified 5-6 elements where we feel this needs to be done better. So, for example, more work needs to be done on microplastic pollution control and how that has to be handled. We need to work on how the fossil fuels impact has to be taken care of, how it can be more optimized as well. We feel the elements in terms of production practices needs to be done better as well, that how more efficient production processes and practices can be made to make it more sustainable as well. Similarly, some of the committee members have also very lightly highlighted the duration of the service life of different products as well, and how that can be improved as well. When we talk about renewable energy and diversity of these products, have we done enough work on that? Have we done enough work on that? We feel there are more margins still present, limited in this, and we can do better than that. And lastly, where I started my debate, the social impacts. Now, are we just focusing on being sustainable in terms of our materials? Are we forgetting the impact which we can have from sustainable and socially impactful lives? That is a question that the committee puts up here as well. I was up in Davos a couple of months ago, and we had an annual ITMF conference as well, and we have been talking a lot about sustainability out there as well. And mind you, everybody right now in the textile industry, just like us and this committee as well. We're all in for sustainability. But the point is, you also have to understand that for the European Union, where these legislations are being proposed for, a larger chunk of the supply chain comes out of underdeveloped countries as well, or let's say the developing countries, I would rather say. Now, these developing countries have different issues at hand as well. My question is that, are we expecting a bit too much from these developing countries who have different core issues? Now, let me highlight, we're talking about elements like how the ozone is getting affected and we're going to measure them. Do we have enough technology in these underdeveloped countries or the developing countries? Let me correct that. The developing countries, do they have enough resources? Do they have enough skill set? Do they have enough technology? Do they have enough human resource to this? So the time, the cost, and the accuracy is a question mark. With due respect, it is still a question mark, and we need better and more understanding on this, that how this will actually be done. These developing countries have basic core issues still lying with them. They are short of just basic hygiene. They are short of making sure that, a smoke coming out of a plant, is it the right kind of smoke as well? So expecting them to compete with a country which is completely developed, and the higher countries like we have in Europe, we have Germany, we have Italy, we have Spain, where they're way far ahead. We have Switzerland as well. So I don't want to point out any names, but the difference of a developed nation and versus a developing nation, the needs and wants are very different. But there is no debate. There's no debate here that ultimately all of us want the same end goal. But my friend, I think the journey is different. The developing countries are starting at a very different point, and they need these basics to be sorted out. If we put them in this pressure, if we put them under this stress that they have to now compete with the European legislations, the European regulations which are coming in, there is a huge possibility of them just cracking up. So, like I started my discussion with, we need a sustainable roadmap for this to happen. The road to sustainability has to be a sustainable roadmap as well. How do we do it? This is what we need to figure out. We need to see how the technologies, the balance of technology, the balance of skill set, the balance of people who have the ability to judge this, the people who have to bring this authentic data. Do we have enough technology to get us this data in a very authentic way? All these questions are open right now. And expecting the developed countries to just do them as good as the developing ones are lagging behind. So we have to see the ground reality. We have to give them the margin of error to come up with this task. How we do it is something I think we need to sit down, have a discussion on, and see how we do it in a more sustainable way. Similarly, we've been told about logistical issues as well. Like if the testings are to be done in European Union or somewhere in Europe, how much time consuming that would be, and would that be sustainable as well? The costs associated as well. Businesses today are running on very thin margin or are shutting down. We are already in a recession. Can we now, for a good cause of sustainability, also put these businesses out of business? I don't think so. Let's think more, let's deliberate more, let's try and figure out what actually we want, how we actually want to do it. Let me try and get to the conclusion of my opinion today on behalf of my committee, that we're all in for this. We're all completely in for a roadmap of sustainability. We all want this to happen, but we also have to understand the ground realities, where some of the countries in the world are right up here, while some are down here. So we need to bridge this gap where the down ones need to come up. How do we do it is up to us. How do we make sure that this road to sustainability is a sustainable roadmap as well, where businesses are encouraged to improve, where fibers are encouraged to make the natural fiber is made more sustainable as well, because end of the day, we're all doing this for the human beings. We're not doing it just for the planet. we need a sustainable planet for these people. So we want the people also to be sustainable as well. How do we do it is where we bring in the right balance for people. So my case here is that the legislations, they need to be with a certain roadmap and not just done overnight. They need to be in consultation with all the stakeholders. They need to fill up the loopholes and they need to fill up where the challenges are. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I will conclude my presentation here, and I will just present a couple of more slides in the end for a few minutes, just to convince, just to show what I have actually said in this whole discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, for the introduction and the opportunity to speak today. As noted, my name is Nate Herman. I am the chair of the Private Sector Advisory Council's Permanent Committee on Brands and Retailers. I am also the Senior Vice President for Policy at the American Apparel and Footwear Association, or AAFA. We are focusing our recommendations on the European Commission's development of its Product Environmental Footprint, or PEF. The PEF will be used as the basis for the European Union's Green Claims Initiative for sustainability labeling for clothing and other products, and will likely be used as the basis for Europe's mandatory human rights and environmental due diligence proposal. Other countries will likely adopt the PEF as a basis for their own sustainability regulation, including in the United States. The problem is that the product environmental footprint focuses on the environmental impact of a material only from cradle to gate, i.e., from the creation of the material until it ends up in the final product. That puts natural fibers, particularly cotton, at a significant disadvantage versus synthetic fibers. Currently, the PEF ignores the use phase of a garment. For example, cotton doesn't have to be washed nearly as much as synthetics. The PEF also discounts end-of-life impacts. Synthetics comprise a significant percentage of the microfibers and microplastics found in our environment. Synthetics also never decompose. Further, cotton is easily recycled. Therefore, we recommend that the PSAC lobby for the European Commission to ensure that its product environmental footprint captures the full environmental impact of a material by measuring the environmental impact of the material during its entire life cycle. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak and present our recommendations. I look forward to taking your questions.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've now heard. Ladies and gentlemen, you have now heard from the chairs of each of the 4 permanent committees of the PSAC. But following our committee meetings, of each individual permanent committee, we had an executive committee meeting, and at that executive committee meeting, we put together a formal statement that we as the joint committee would like to present to the ICAC plenary session. And this states that all 4 permanent committees suggest taking another look at the process adopted by governments for policy making. For example, communications with the industry representatives are very important before making policies that will directly impact their sector, businesses, and livelihoods. Even considering the advanced state of these laws, we believe it important to share our concerns. Besides its direct impact, once the EU has policies in place, several other countries are likely to follow, which raises a potential impact. Many of the members who represent the cotton value chain will be directly impacted by this legislation, but we're not even aware of the proceedings and were shocked when they fully understand the potential negative impact for the cotton industry.
All of the committees demand a system that ensures a level playing field for all kinds of fiber, that the PEF system does not include a fair evaluation of the impact of microplastic pollution on the environment. We also believe that the relevant impact categories, such as the end of life, were not accounted for in the presentation of the HIG MSI data. And if relevant impact categories are omitted, it is difficult to assess the actual environmental benefit of the impact categories already included in the HIG MSI. The complete life cycle of a product should be considered for asserting the environmental performance of fiber. Renewable and biodegradable raw materials such as natural fibers are more circular than products made from fossil fuel sources because they can naturally decompose over time. This needs to be included in all evaluations. Additionally, if this is truly a cradle-to-gate analysis, the biogenic carbon captured in the fiber would then be shown as only a negative emission, making cotton carbon negative. Only at the end of life does some of this carbon get emitted back to the environment during the cotton fiber decomposition. Another point to be highlighted is that any rules on traceability must also be applied to other fibers, including man-made fibers. The third point is that, moreover, when we look at the cotton, we shouldn't consider it just as another fiber used in textiles, but consider the social and economic impact of a sector that supports the livelihood of millions of farmers and textile workers across the globe. It is the only source of income for many households, making it vital to raising the income of small-scale farmers and downstream stakeholders. It is critical to support the economy of many less developed nations, several of which rely on as one of the most traded commodities. Now, this statement, together with additional background supporting detail, will be published on the ICAC website at the end of this plenary meeting. Copies shall be distributed to all ICA member governments, as well as being circulated to all PSAC members via their member organizations. As I alluded to in my opening comments, the PSAC is seeking a level playing field for our cotton natural fiber, but we are debating an area where emotions are running high. And so now we just want to play you a short video from a different natural fiber industry that demonstrates this level of high feeling. We understand that counterclaims have been made to some of the assertions in this advert, but our focus today is solely to demonstrate the heightened level of emotion in respect of the perception that natural fibers are not being treated fairly. So Secretariat, could I ask you to play that advert, please? So ladies and gentlemen, I apologize we didn't get the sound throughout the whole of that, but I think you get the idea of what we're trying to show you. So if our individual presentations have not generated questions, perhaps that short video has done so. So I'd like to open the floor to questions to the chairs of the 4 permanent committees. Plus, we also have Miss Emily from Lima from the Brunswick Group, who has provided the PSAC with information on the working methodologies of the EU when preparing legislation, and who has also agreed to take questions. One last housekeeping point, and that is, may we ask you use the raised hand function in Zoom to indicate that you wish to raise a question. So thank you, and the floor is open to questions. Zoe, I hear you. Do you have your hand raised? The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Peter. And hello, everybody. I cannot start my video. I'm not sure why. So my name is Zoe Dril. I am the representative of the EU in the ICAC Standing Committee. I would like to thank all the PSAC members for their reports, and I would like to assure them that everything is well noted on my side, and I'm happy that there's actually a statement which summarizes the concerns that you have raised. You have mentioned a number of regulations and policies. There's the one about Germany, which I cannot really comment upon, as I do not have their position at this point in time. There is also the Sustainable Product Initiative and the PEF that have been mentioned, and there is a corporate due diligence directive that's also in the making in the EU. So I can briefly comment on those, and I would like to highlight a few points which I think are important. Well, the first one is, of course, to highlight the overall objectives of the legislations that are passed right now under the Green Deal, which go far beyond the cotton sector. Those look at sustainability as a necessity and not a choice, and they, of course, entail a number of changes which need to be debated and which are going to be tough for everybody, but they mean to help, make product placed on the EU more sustainable for consumers, the environment, and the climate. And as per the Green Deal objectives, this is seen as something that is unavoidable in today's world. So that's the first thing that I wanted to highlight. As you know, for what concerns due diligence directives themselves, and in fact, the Commission one, it's encouraging the largest businesses to frame their decisions in a way that now takes into account social, human, economic, and environmental impact. And we can only see this as a progress, for our societies as a whole. So that's, of course, a general comment which I have to make. The second big comment which I have to make is that all EU legislation is, of course, subject to consultation with stakeholders. And here we have to be very clear that these consultations took place, that they were long, that there's an official process, and it will take you just a minute to find the roadmap of consultations for both, for all the directives that were mentioned. So if I look at the corporate sustainability due diligence directive that is still debated at this moment, back in October 2020, there was a 12 weeks long consultation, and after feedback was received, a summary report was prepared and open for feedback for another few weeks. So just the same happened, of course, for the Sustainable Product Directive. The roadmap was issued in November 2020. A public consultation took place between March and June 2021, and a feedback report was open for comments between April and June 2022. So this is the way that when enacting EU legislation, a consultation happens. And of course, parallel consultations are also taking place in a transparent manner with individual stakeholders to take into account particulars of some sectors. Also, the EU proceeds with impact assessments, which anticipate on the assessment of, which assess the potential impact in anticipation of a forthcoming legislation. So that's the very second important point which I would like to raise. Now, I am not myself a specialist on these legislations. I work for DG INSPA, so I work on the development cooperation side of things. And unfortunately, we have not been warned to invite the colleagues from the DG ENV or other DGs. But also, I actually regret that the PSAC has not called upon the EU during its works last year if they had questions about our legislation, because I think this would have been the place where to discuss, and this is now a bit difficult to do so in the plenary. I'm having the Arabic translation in parallel, but that's okay. In any case, I was more or less finished. I would like to assure you that I will basically pass on your statement to my colleagues, especially in DG Environment, and I remain available for further consultations with the PSAC. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Zoe, thank you very much for the clarification, and please don't get it wrong. We're not here to
Merci de ces
argue
précisions.
against the work that's been done, and we appreciate the work that's been done.
Мы провели большую работу.
I think our concern is that we ourselves were a little bit caught unaware of it, and we need to find a way of ensuring that we now get the message through. And we appreciate very much that you can pass the message on to your colleagues. Does anybody or any of the members of the four chairs have any comment to make at this point? No, and I don't see any questions coming. Can I invite some questions if anybody has anything?
أي أسئلة؟
If not, maybe I could ask a question from Emily. Emily, are you able to tell us anything about the current timeline from your point of view of what you're hearing about with the EU and the position?
Yes, I'm happy to. Thank you, Peter. And it's a pleasure to be here and to hear from all of you and speak to you today. As Peter mentioned, like Zoe, I'm also based here in Brussels. I work for a public affairs consultancy, helping organizations navigate the EU and its lawmaking.
Ayudando a las organizaciones. No.
And have been working with the IWTO over the past year and a half, helping them sort of understand the EU textile strategy and how to effect positive change. So the main legislative file that we are anticipating, it was mentioned several times today, is the substantiation of green claims proposal. It was coincidentally due to come out from the European Commission today, in fact, and we learned yesterday that it has been postponed until 2023. This kind of postponement is normal. It's actually the third time this specific proposal has been delayed. This kind of delay may indicate that there are actually some substance issues that the Commission is still resolving on this particular file. Media here have reported that the complexity of creating and enforcing this kind of system may be one of the Commission's main challenges and may be a reason that this was delayed. But just because this specific file, this main one, sort of pertaining to the natural fibers industry has been delayed, doesn't slow down other initiatives in the EU that regulate the circular economy and specifically the textiles industry. The textile strategy is a non-legislative file that will still influence policymakers' thinking and work on textiles regulation. So that's an important one to follow, even though it's not specific regulation. And in terms of timeline, to Peter's question, this has already been introduced and will be started to be debated on in early next year through reports and opinions by members of the European Parliament. And the last one I just call attention to in terms of timeline to, for folks here to be sort of following, if you can, is the eco-design requirements for sustainable products proposal. This was released this year, earlier in March, also by DG ENVI. And because it's already been released and proposed and taken to the European Parliament, it should probably come to fruition and start being wrapped up towards the end of 2023. The European Parliament has already begun its debates on this file, is beginning its debates on this file in January. So that's another important one to keep an eye on. So those are sort of the three I wanted to mention in terms of.
Esas son las tres que yo.
But as I said, substantiating green claims has been delayed, and do watch this space as we find out a new date for its release, which hasn't come out from the Commission just yet.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, Emily. So I think to Zoe's point now, we have the perfect opportunity to provide as much information through to the EU for their consideration. And once again, I thank Zoe for passing that information on. If I could move on to Cliff, could I ask you, do you think that the cotton merchants and associated businesses who stand to be directly impacted by these policies are how are they informed of the policy changes? What should we do in that regard?
Thanks, Peter. And just listening, obviously, to some interesting comments there from Zoe and Emily. And Zoe raises a very good point in terms of, should we have not raised this earlier with the EU? I think obviously in hindsight we should, but I think the main thing is that up until discussions over these last sort of 6-9 months in particular, certainly to the cotton trade, from my perspective, the communication and awareness of what was actually going on and potentially being implemented was very limited. And clearly now there is an increasing awareness of the impact that this potentially will have on the cotton trade. And at the end of the day, it's not about cotton merchants specifically or traders, but it's about the whole supply chain of cotton, and it's going to impact us all. And we all must have a voice and be more proactive in trying to find out what is going on. Zoe mentioned that there was plenty available for public comment. Personally, I don't recall seeing anything through the cotton trade, whether it came through ICAC or ICA or any other association, in terms of public comment about the implication for legislation in the EU. So bottom line, Peter, yeah, it's communication, it's awareness, and then becoming involved in the discussion.
Thanks, Chris. So basically, you're saying we have a lot more work to do in PSAC this coming year to ensure that
وهذا كده علينا نقوم بمزيد من العمل
to the EU, and not only to the EU. Let's not single out only EU, but to all governments on.
Non seulement pour les contacts avec.
No, Peter, I think you're exactly right, and there's no doubt that what this discussion and what all these committee meetings have done over these past few months is to raise this awareness. And if we can all take it back to our various companies and associations and raise that awareness and get more engagement, then that's got to be good for all of us.
Totally agree with you there, Cliff. Francisco, if I could move on to you, can I ask you a question? Slightly changing the subject a little bit, but how difficult do you think it will be for the average cotton producer in Africa to understand the complexity of these new laws and to make appropriate changes to their practices to comply with it?
Hello, Peter. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning. I was trying to start my video, but apparently I cannot. But anyway, it's a good question. For those who do not know Africa, Africa has basically a producing model based on small-scale farming, and we work with the bottom of the pyramid. So they're really the last mile, people that tends to be informal. In my case, in Mozambique, the majority of the people don't even have identity cards. So the literacy levels are very low. But this, again, is one of the benefits of cotton. Cotton is able to reach out to those that really need. So
يصل إلى كل
this is the
الفئات.
challenge that we all have in hands. And that's why all players are important, the private sector, but also the developments, the governments, because we need to coordinate well, just to make sure that we are able to link the world. So the people, the farmers, and the global markets, and in particular the global north markets, which tends to be more and more demanding. And it's important that we are all able to establish guidelines and policies that are able to motivate these origins to become part of the transformation process. And we need to make sure that we are not just simply managing risk and isolating more and more, the farmers and the people that really need. So this is a challenge. I know it's a generic question and it's a generic answer. I was very sad to hear that we lost timing. So of course we have some learnings to assume from our side also, and to make sure that our voice is heard. But no process is ever ended, I think. So it's up to us to keep on making sure that we coordinate with the right entities and with governments to make sure that the voice is heard and the right policies are implemented. And right policies are the ones that are able to integrate and motivate farmers to be part of the transformation process, and not simply, again, to isolate. Over to you, Peter.
Thanks very much, Francisco. Yeah, I think everybody here is in agreement. We want everyone to be integrated into this whole process, and that is exactly the point of our discussions today. So moving from farmers, let's move on to textile. And Anis, you mentioned the fact that a large number of textile industries are located in developing countries. They have diverse issues, lack of capacity, the right technology. In the light of these issues, and in your view, will they be able to adopt to the changes that are being proposed? Anis, are you there?
Yes, Peter. Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry, it was just not getting unmute. So I think that's a very pertinent question, and this is something which has been very related to what I've been trying to advocate in this call as well. The point is that the developing nations has been trying to catch up with a lot of these changes and the impact of not just what these legislations are bringing in, but also the fact that this is something these nations actually want for themselves as well. But we have to understand that for a lot of us, there are some more basic issues that we need to take care of first. And when we go into that aspects, it is a matter of grave concern that when we talk about sustainability, we have to understand that we have to first of all have more sustainable human beings in this side of the world as well. So everybody will be able to adapt this, but everybody has to figure out their own timelines for this. Unfortunately, the way things are, and as we must all agree to the fact that there's a world recession going on right now, we are somehow in a position where we cannot commit to it at a pace where we would actually want this to happen. So this will take its sweet time. Needless to say, the commitment is there, and it's a very strong commitment for this to happen. So yes, the technology will be adopted, but it's not going to be at a timeline which is being proposed. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much, Anis. Zoe, I see you have your hand raised. Please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much again. Look, I just wanted to react to the question of how much weight will be falling on the producers and on the smallholders. And well, first of all, I'm happy to hear that everyone's committed to sustainability as a whole, and that we just try to make it happen the best we can, all of us. And as I work for DG INTPA, this is why my DG is representing the EU in the ICAC, is because our concern is for the smallholder farmers who are the poorest, or the poorest of the poor sometimes. And we have decided that within the Commission, it was my DG that deals with poverty and poverty reduction that had to be represented in the organization. So I'm myself very, I would say, sensitive to the issue, and I work on similar issues also in the field of cocoa, and I can just confirm that, of course, we see that with these regulations that are coming in, there's one on deforestation that's very big as well, and that has the same type of impacts. The onus of the work is put on the private sector. So the private sector is the agent that now has to confirm that what he imports is more sustainable. So that's the first thing. The weight is certainly not on the producer. My DG and others are involved into making sure that the necessary accompanying measures are happening. and that producers can be supported. But then I think where it's going to be sometimes difficult is that we need to triangulate the work of everybody, and the role of governments is going to be key as well to make this work. And so this is where we all have to work together to make sure that down the line we can really help the producers and make sure that also businesses can operate, in a way that works and can go through this transition. So that's in 2 words what I could say, but I can say much more if you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Zoe. Appreciate your clarifications and information, and totally agree with you. We will have to work very much together, and I think we can say PSAC will be providing you with information going forward into 2023. And if you have questions, please feel free to let's make this a two-way street, so we got communications going backwards and forwards in both directions, so that we get the right information to the right people. Have we got anybody else on the call got any questions for our presenters? So if not, I would like to ask Nate a question and give Zoe a little bit of a break and talk about the Norwegian Consumer Authority, because they have taken action against an environmental label that has that the Sustainable Apparel Coalition was testing to translate the HIG index and MCI into a consumer-friendly eco-label. Do you think this is good news, and can this be used in our favor?
I mean, good news is a strong term, but first of all, thank you Peter for the question and for having me here. But yes, the good news is sort of a strong term. Obviously, we support the idea of trying to be able to create an eco label, but what the Norwegian Consumer Authority raised regarding the work around the HIG index is highlighting the issue that we've all raised in the videos and in our paper, is that there are concerns that the HIG index and this consumer-facing label do not capture the full impact of fibers, particularly man-made fibers and petroleum-based fibers versus natural fibers. And so this gives us an opportunity to raise this question again, that if you are looking at the full environmental impact, that you have to go from essentially cradle to grave on the life cycle.
Pour adopter une politique sur toute la cycle.
When the final product is actually produced, you have to see how it's used, how potential for reuse, recycling, and eventually end of life. And so those are very important considerations. So it does allow us an opportunity to raise that issue. Information that was not available prior to the Norwegian Consumer Authority raising this issue. And so it gives us another opportunity on that. And hopefully there are, as Zoe raised, further opportunities to comment on this as it moves forward and with this new information.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, Nate. So I think we're getting a common message here that we have an awful lot more work to do in the coming months, and I think PSAC is going to be quite busy. Emily, go back to you. What do you think is the best we can do at this stage to make our voices heard? What should we be doing, in your opinion, and from your background and your point of view?
Sure, happy to. Zoe made the right call, or she gave a shout out to sort of the consultations and more of the formal processes that the European Commission has opened to stakeholder input. And I think, as she also said in her comments and rightfully pointed out, that doesn't mean though that input stops at that point. The Commission, like all governments, are open to conversations and engagement, and that's also what they're there for, right? To represent our needs and our industry needs. So in essence, Peter, making your voice heard is the most effective form of advocacy at this stage. Even as the proposals that have already been put forward, that doesn't mean they're passed yet. They're heading to the European Parliament and the Council. That means they will still be debated on for several months. I know IWTO in Brussels and other international organizations have helped to set up, one coalition. I know Terry Townsend, who actually has his hand raised now, is active in that. Make the Label Count, it's called. That's just one example, of a united coalition force advocating for the proper measurement of textiles environmental footprint. But it doesn't have to always be done in through a formal organization and coalition. Anyone is welcome to meet with Commission officials, members of the European Parliament. Media are always interested in these types of stories, writing letters to government officials, meeting with consumer organizations, being active on digital media. The sky's the limit, but a lot of our work with IWTO over the past year and this coalition has been, how do we do that in an organized way, and how do we do that most effectively? So it sounds like Zoe can be a great reference and resource for you all in sort of how to organize those efforts. But yeah, that would be my advice, that the battle is by no means over, and that there's plenty of opportunity to still make your voice heard.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for that, Emily. Terry, I see you have your hand raised. Please, the floor is yours.
Trying to start my video, but I'll just, are you hearing me, Peter?
Yes, we can indeed,
okay.
Terry.
I'll just leave the picture there. Yes, so just to piggyback on what Emily said, and Peter, you've been talking about collaboration and coalitions. I'd point out there are approximately 5 million households that raise sheep for wool. There are about 6 million households that raise jute. When you add up coir, sisal, hemp, all of the natural fiber family, you're talking about 40 million households. And so this is obviously our focus today is cotton, but this is not just a cotton issue. This is a natural fiber issue, and it involves hundreds of millions of people when you talk about the agricultural value chains. And so I'm very glad that Emily brought out that there's more than cotton involved in this. And we need to collaborate with all of our sister natural fiber organizations on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry. Yeah, I agree. I think that was some of the points that came up from our deliberations in the various committees, that was the social and environmental impact, particularly the social impact of the number of people in the world that is affected by these potential rule changes, but who are involved in the industry in one way or the other. I'm seeing very few questions coming from the floor. So I'd like one more time to ask if there's anybody who has something from the floor. Please come forward. Nothing coming forward. Then if I could ask the chair of each of the 4 permanent committees to, I've got one question. I've got to put the same question to each of you, and perhaps you could go through it one after the other. And that is, how do you see the direct impact of the current policy changes or proposed policy changes impacting your particular area of the business? So let's start with producers and then go on to the merchants and then to the textile and then to brands. So starting with you, Francisco.
Thanks again, Peter. I'm still unable to connect my video. But anyway, to be honest, I think all these issues tend to be a little bit complex to us all, or at least to us, the private sector that are in the daily life trying to work out our businesses. But at the end of the day, Europe is the biggest consumption market of cotton products. It depends on the implementation rates of these policies and how far they will go. So if they are really exclusive, if I may put it this way, it might have a tremendous impact for the global South in general, if we do not comply with all criteria that's implemented. And that's what we are trying to basically mobilize attention and efforts, just to make sure that we don't miss the opportunity of having all the 20 million households, which tend to be small-scale farmers, parts of the process. So, to be honest, I don't have an answer to your question. I hope that some people in this group would be even able to comment or to clarify. I would love to have that emphasis. I'm trying not to be too nervous because I think it's important that us all keep some clarity in our minds in order to navigate throughout this regulation stuff. But but it puts a positive pressure also in the players and businesses, and I think it's what the associations are trying to do, to pass down the information and to work at the local level also, just to make sure that everyone understands and implements actions in that same sense. Well, that's the answer that I have to you, Peter. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Francisco. Cliff?
Yeah, Peter, it's not an easy question to answer. I think the biggest challenge is how we bring all of this together and all collaborate to communicate this situation. You know, to me, this has been a great starting point with all the committees coming together. But the challenge for us is how do we bring this all together, one voice in a professional manner to carry on this discussion. To me, that's the biggest challenge that's come out of this meeting today.
Brilliant. Thanks, Cliff. Anis, from your point of view?
Yes, Peter. Thank you. I think just adding on to what Cliff is saying is very important. But being an optimist by nature, I feel that events like this, calls like this, where the session before also was trying to advocate, like the socio-economic reforms and how women empowerment is also part of this beautiful natural fiber that we have. So the awareness is there. You definitely need to do more. We definitely need to know more, and we definitely need to do more, and that is how we can do it. I grew up in Davos in Miami as well. I was up in Davos as well, and this is what we're trying to advocate. So the voices are being heard. I feel, unfortunately, we never did enough effort before to probably raise our voices, and this seems more like an effort which is well coordinated, where everybody has one single voice. Even with the preliminary meetings that we've had, the committee meetings that we've had, there seems to be one voice, and I'm sure that we will be heard, and it's not going to be easy to just implement it without the right roadmap. Thank you.
Thanks, Anis. Finally, Nate, over to you. What's your view on this one?
Yeah, I'm just going to echo my three colleagues here and just basically say that, we need to be speaking with a single voice, and we need to raise that voice loudly and as we move forward here. Obviously, this is an immediate issue that we need to address because of the timeline that Emily and Zoe have laid out. But if we can do it on this issue, then we'll be well positioned to raise that voice loudly on other issues that are important to us ahead of things and be much more proactive versus reactive.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. Yeah, I agree. It's something we do need to be more proactive upon, and that's, I think, the whole purpose of the establishment of the PSAC is that we can do that, and we can have that intercommunication with the audience today. We have a question come up on the chat, which the translators will not be able to see. It's from somebody who is showing up as just called Zoom user. If I could give the floor to you, and you could please ask your question or make your comment, please. Perhaps you can't get yourself unmuted. I will read the chats for the benefit of the translators. And this is from, I don't know where it came from, but it says, we need to reach out to the Taiwan Banana Research and other organizations to partner with them as they develop substitute blends. We have just added 35% pineapple fibers into cotton. It came out wonderfully. That's an interesting combination, and thank you for that comment. Once again, I would just ask, are there any further questions that we have coming from the floor?
Well, Peter, if you allow me, it's Francisco again. I could not raise my hand.
Francisco. Not
wasting the time of everyone, but maybe it's just sharing that for me, I think it's a bit a shame that we tend to spend most of our time trying to pass down the accurate information of cotton against other fibers and the real impacts of cotton. So that's a very big yellow card that we all get, because it shouldn't be that way. And we cannot, they're having the risk of the main consumer, which tends to have a reduced vision of the value chains, of course. And we all are all consumers of several products. And of course, no one can expect the consumer to understand the full impact. And I think that it's not acceptable that within the governments that take the decisions that really impact the businesses, that we are still in a position that we spend more than 50% of our time and documents writing about the real impact of cotton, both on climates and livelihoods. It's really a shame. I think it's really a yellow card to us all. And we need to be in front and not at the back of the race. And we need really to make sure that all our governments do understand what cotton means for the environment and for the livelihoods. If we can do that, I think 80% of the work would be done. And I'm sure that we would be able to have, or we will be able to have a path towards the positive change of our world. Over to you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Francisco.
Peter, this is Anis. I just wanted to, second what Francisco is saying, and I think he's saying it with a lot of passion and a lot of emotion, because this is what it actually is. And just to add in, we are all talking about sustainability. We're talking about recycling. We have to understand that this fiber is something which comes from the soil and can easily go back into the soil as well, and make a process of sustainability much less complicated than what we are trying to do. So for developing nations, where I've been trying to pitch my topic today again and again, we all have to focus on the fact that we have issues like the right yieldages as well for cotton crop, and the kind of quality we can bring into that as well. So maybe those are more sustainable steps that we need to look at. And like Francisco said, be on front of the race, not in the back. Thank you.
Thank you, Anis, and thank you, Francisco. I totally agree with both of you. We do need to be at the front of the race. I think we have done in this past year, perhaps. I agree. We get that yellow card for not communicating enough with various governments during the year. But following this plenary message, we have got a quite substantive document that is going to be published. It will be on the ICAC website very shortly. And if we could make a humble request to all our government representatives who are on the call, please do take the time to read and understand that, and understand our concerns. And as I mentioned earlier, let's make this a two-way street. When you read the documents, you have something, please come back to us with questions. Please come back to the PSAC. This is why we are here, to be that link between the private sector and yourselves, the government. Let's utilize this well in 2023 to get these messages across in both directions. With that, Kai, I'm seeing no further questions come up, so could I hand the meeting back over to you?
Well, thank you, Peter, and a very big thanks to all the chairs and the committees for all the hard work they did in debating the subject and learning about it, and their contributions for today's session. It really does underline the importance of governments having that interaction with the private sector, and the importance of the role of the PSAC in facilitating that. I would like to think ahead beyond this particular issue, and hope that for all governments, that the PSAC is the first committee that they go to when they want to interact and they want to find out the views of the private sector. I think after today, the PSAC's voice is now being heard, And I hope that Zoe feeds back to the appropriate committees and puts forward your views, and then also feeds back to the PSAC, so we can actually find out what progress is being made. So with that, once again, a very big thank you to all of you. A really important subject, and it is. Okay, I think we have reached the end of today's sessions. So I thank you for your participation today. We'll be starting again a little bit later tomorrow at 9:10 DC time, which I think is 14:10 GMT. And so I look forward to seeing you all, welcome you all back for the 4th open session tomorrow, which is Rethinking Fashion and Textiles for 2030. Thank you very much and good night.
Thank you. Thank you.